So you're here for one reason. Someone close to you has been diagnosed with cancer. Everything has just turned into chaos. It was completely unexpected and you currently feel powerless. But I'm here to tell you, you don't have to be powerless and you're not powerless. In fact, you're going to become the single greatest asset that they could ever have in their entire fight. I'm going to show you how I shifted from basically a terrified bystander who couldn't do anything to someone who was calm, strategic, and actually my dad's #1 advocate for his own healing. And if you don't know already, my name is Ryan. I was a senior equity analyst at a big consulting firm. I worked to basically take very complex information, distill it down to just that one good nugget, which then my clients' hedge funds use to make billion-dollar decisions. And of course, that's all good and fine. But during that job, you can see here, my dad, this was 4 months before he got diagnosed. We went on a hike together as a family, and you can see he's trying to smile for this picture. And I'm covering his face a little bit just because he wants to stay private. But you can clearly see his smile is still laced with pain because of that cancer. But he didn't know. He was like, oh, maybe it's just a virus. It's probably just some cold or something like that. 4 months later, he was first diagnosed with stage 2, and then went up to stage 3, and then went to stage 4, and then went to stage 4 metastatic cancer. It was all over his body. He had chicken egg sized tumors in his head, by his ears, in his shoulders, in his neck, in his back, by his ribs, in his hips, and on both sides of his body, not just one. And once I heard that diagnosis, and I was still in my job at that time, I was like, oh, all these business skills in the world, helping hedge funds make billion-dollar decisions, and I can't do anything for my dad. But once I calmed down a bit, I realized, actually, that is not the case. That was the wrong mindset. I actually could do something. I could take those same skills, taking the complex information and turning it to what is the single best actionable thing that my dad could take out of it to support his own healing. So what did I do? I read the books, I watched the videos, I saw articles, I looked at blog posts, I read through forums, I looked at databases, I read through clinical papers. Essentially, I spent the last 16 months building a system specifically so that my dad could heal, specifically for him in his body, not anyone else. So he could be supported in his own healing and also supporting his own treatments of his cancer from the medical professionals. And 16 months later, from him being diagnosed with that stage 4 metastatic cancer, he's now undetectable. Literally, today is when he got his scan results. The day I'm making this video right now, undetectable. And technically he was undetectable before that, but there was 2 reoccurrences. But now his scans are looking very good. And the doctors have said this is a very exceptional result. And to really just show you, also as of recording this video, just 2 months ago, I took him on the trip to the Grand Canyon because he was recovering so well. He was getting so much stronger. While he was in his treatments, when he first got diagnosed, close to when he first got diagnosed, he could barely muster the strength to pick up water to drink it, or pick up an egg carton from the grocery store, or walk to the bathroom on his own. But here, he was able to go 75% of the way into the Grand Canyon at the first point where you could see the Colorado River and hike all the way back out, pretty much keeping pace with me, a completely healthy person. And yes, this is not easy. Yes, this is very unusual. And the doctors also said it is unusual. Yes, my dad had to endure many treatments and they were very difficult for him to get through. But through the protocols that we worked on together and specifically found for him, through the systems that I created to actually find those things that individually work for him, he was able to get that to that point. But of course, I am not a doctor. I can't provide any medical advice. But what I absolutely can do is give you the protocols for you to try to figure out in your specific situation, and specifically who you are caring for and what treatments they're getting from whatever medical team that you have built, what is going to be most supportive for you, your individual situation. The systems, the protocols, the operating manual for you, the caregiver. So here's the actual start. I know I just told you a lot of stuff. You're probably wondering, okay, where do I actually start? And I don't want to cause any more overwhelm because I know tons of things are going on in your mind. I know when my dad was first diagnosed, I was kind of all over the place. But these are the things and templates that I created for you, which is what specifically helped me to get organized and actually start to see the path forward, doing the actions that are going to support my dad's treatment and his own healing as much as possible. So there are 3 different things that I started right in the beginning. 2 of them are templates that you can just download, make a copy of. I have on Google Docs. And I actually have it preloaded with a few questions, a few things that can actually get you started, and I'm sure will be helpful. And number one is the master question log, because you probably have hundreds of questions floating around your brain right now, like questions about the actual diagnosis, questions that you could ask the oncologist, just questions on what you can do yourself. So effectively what it is to dump all your questions there. So one, you make sure that you don't forget any of them. Number two, so you don't have to keep them all floating around your brain. And number three, that you make sure that you can actually find the answer to these things and reference it when you are speaking to the source of the information, say the oncologist or whoever in your medical team. So take a look at my template if you want it. It is preloaded with some questions that you might want to ask your oncologist that were at least very helpful for me. And then you can just add your questions to it to make sure you're getting all the information that you want. And the fact that it is in a Google Docs, I think is most effective, just because you can now access it as long as you have internet on any device that you have. So if you're on the go, you're in the hospital right now, and you want to make sure you're answering all the questions because the doctor's right in front of you, you can just pull it up. Their questions are right there. You can update it right there as well. And then once you come home, maybe on your computer, it's right there for you to edit and or do some more research online. Number two, what you want to set up is a brain dump doc. And this is probably something that you only want to do temporarily. And personally, this is one of the first things that I did, just because, again, in the beginning, you're probably so much things going on in your mind. So what is very helpful is just dumping all that information into one document to get your thoughts organized. Again, so then now you can divert your mental resources after seeing that whole picture to whatever action that is going to be most supportive, whatever that is. And by seeing that whole picture, it's just going to allow your brain to wrap this whole situation and start to come up with more effective ways for you to actually use your time going forward. So in this brain dump doc, which is something that I also have a template for you, I've preloaded it with different categories of things that you might want to think about it, like what is the actual diagnosis, when was he diagnosed or she diagnosed, whoever you're caring for, the oncologist contacts, so whoever you might want to work with, maybe different medications, maybe medical histories. It's sort of like your thing to look at any time you want to remind yourself of your current situation. And the third thing is not something that I have a template for, more of an action for you. Again, you're probably going to want to do a lot of research because you want to be helpful, right? So like me, you're going to probably want to learn a lot about cancer and how to help support this healing process and about the different treatments. So that means watching tons of YouTube videos. That means reading books. That means reading articles. That means reading clinical studies or papers, research documents, looking at databases. And there's a ton of links, right? So for me personally, of course, YouTube is a very helpful platform. There's a lot of researchers and doctors out there giving out information for free. I would suggest you make a playlist and just save all the ones that the things that you want to watch first, and don't try not to go in and like watch hours and hours and hours of video first. Save them first, and then you can prioritize what you think is most important. Same thing with all the links. Just get all the links together, all the things you want to read, all the books you want to read. You put it all in one place, ideally like a bookmarks folder. And then after you feel like you've collected all the different sources that will answer a lot of your questions or give you the information you feel you need, then that is when you go towards and actually consume what you think is most effective. So those are the three things. One, dump all your questions. Two, dump all the information you have so you can get a grasp of your current situation. Number three is make sure you just gather all the things that you want to research and put them in one place and then prioritize and go learn. And yes, at the start, this is going to be super messy, but we just want to prioritize speed right now. Like when I was an equity analyst and working for hedge funds, I had to go from like company to company, week by week, learning tons and tons of things. This is sort of the process that I use right in the beginning, because we just to prioritize that speed, ramp up as fast as possible. And then after that is when we start to get organized and build your own system. So you don't have to use these documents later on. You can start to build the system that works for you. So in terms of action steps, I encourage you to do this first. Get organized, get collected, and then we can move on to the next module, which is your role, the mindset that you need to have, and then how you can actually become that number one advocate for who you're caring for. Start to really strategize and support the healing and treatments that are going to come in the next coming months. By the way, you might be wondering about these documents or these resources that I'm mentioning, any templates. Well, you don't have to start them from scratch. You can actually download all of them completely for free in the community that I created in the top link in the description. So you can simply pause this video if you want, click that link, and you can grab all of them there, then come back to this and keep going. Or you can simply join to grab all those things later and finish this video first. So you're probably like a day in right now, maybe on the second day after you've started to gather yourself, get organized with those templates that I gave you. But there's probably still tons of emotions going around. I know for me, when my dad first diagnosed and I was still in my job, there were so many emotions going around. I literally couldn't do the work. And luckily, I was working with people that were kind enough to just let me sort of take it easy. So what I will say for you is, in order to support the healing and be as helpful as possible, it is best for you to just let those emotions out. Don't try to hold them in, because if you hold them in and then you go and try to like help whoever it is you're caring for, like I go to my dad and I'm holding in the bottle of emotions, he can kind of pick up on that for sure. And I feel like he sees that I'm like doubtful or uncertain or fearful or maybe a bit sad, and that will affect him. If you internally you feel like a victim, like why did this happen? Do you have all these negative things going on? It's not going to help them. So it's best if in private you go and you just let it all out. That's what I did in my own room. I got myself collected and then I went out there completely clear. So then when my dad sees me, he sees me that I'm completely clear. I'm completely confident. It looks like I have a path forward. It gives confidence with him within himself. It starts to help him clear the doubt. And if you think about it, whoever you're caring for, they probably have much more of those negative emotions than you. So it's best if you stay in that mental state of collectedness, of stability, essentially, so that you never negatively impact their emotional state. And I did this within the first 2 days. I was pretty much clear by then. And I personally am not very emotional person. So I guess it wasn't as hard for me. But what I will say, it absolutely was the most emotional time of my entire life. Like even when my grandfather died of cancer, this is when I was very young, I held back the tears and I only had one tear run down my right eye. But for my dad, I'll just say that there was more than one tear. And I mean, he's still here now, so it's completely past. And he's actually very healthy now. Honestly, maybe even more healthy, arguably, than he was before he got diagnosed with cancer. But, getting a stage 4 diagnosis is, especially metastatic, it's hard to think that good things will happen. So try to do this in private as fast as possible. Once you do that, in the next video, we're going to talk about your role of actually giving care, actually becoming that strategist #1 advocate, like how I view cancer in my dad, and then how I view my role on helping them along with the medical team, how all of these things can work best together. After the 1.5 years of now helping my dad throughout this cancer journey, pretty much full time, this is the role that I developed and I find is most effective and conducive of healing for my dad and for his treatments. I personally view that caregiver role, that #1 advocate role, as a strategist. And I very specifically mean strategist because in the body, right? If you think about cancer, if you think about whoever that you're caring for right now who has cancer, or think about yourself if you had cancer, right? What is cancer specifically? Cancer is an individual disease, right? Everybody's cancer is different. Why? Because everyone has different cell DNA, and cancer is a malfunctioning cell. So every single cancer cell in the entire world, any person that has cancer, even if they're an identical twin, their DNA is slightly different. So that means that cancer is slightly different. And now if you think about this, right? If the cancer is a cell, essentially that cell is rebelling against the body. That's why it's being harmful. So now if you think of the person you're caring for, like an entire country, like they're a country and the person that they are is a ruler of that country. They're having a civil war essentially inside their body. All the cells of their body are like the citizens. The immune system is like the soldiers. And the cancer is like the rebels that are rebelling against the country, have started this civil war. And any medical team that you have that are giving these treatments, these are like your allies. They're sending you equipment, which is the different treatment options. And they're actively sending you things like medications. These are supplies for your body to heal as much as possible, have weapons to fight against the rebels, the cancer in the body. So what your role is, right? You as a caregiver, you're an external role. You are the strategist to the ruler of this country, right? You advise the ruler, like the president, whoever you're giving care to. They have so many things going on, both inside and outside. It's very difficult for them to see the picture as clear as you could, being somebody external. So not only can you see the state of their whole body, their whole country, you also can work with the allies more effectively just because you have less things going on. You can start to coordinate with the allies, the medical professionals, and since you're with this person you're caring for probably many hours of the day, way more than the oncologist, you start to observe their different symptoms or how things are reacting for them. So then you can communicate those things most effectively to your medical team. And that actually allows the medical team to help whoever you're caring for even better. And remember, whoever you're caring for, they are the ruler, the person who owns their body. So whatever the decision they make, that is the final decision. You are there to just give information, to articulate to them, for example, pros and cons of different options so they can decide best without having to like just analyze all this stuff together. You put it in a very digestible way and then they make the final decision. So to summarize, what you're doing is you're doing the research for them. You're putting together all the information, pros and cons from all different parties and online resources so that the person you're caring for, that like the ruler of that country, their own body, can make the final decision as best as possible to support their healing, their treatments. And you're looking essentially for a triple green light situation. You think it's a good idea based on everything that you're seeing and the research, and the medical team thinks whatever you're going to do is a good thing. And of course, final call, whoever you're caring for is confident in that final decision. So now that you understand this role, you're probably going to have an upcoming appointment to your different medical teams, whoever you're going to work with. So I want to give a day one pack. So what should you bring to the actual appointment to be not only most comfortable, but most prepared? So you're going to an appointment, maybe you've already been to appointments, but this is about the things that I brought to help my dad be most comfortable, let's say during a doctor visit, during treatment, even during a consultation. All things that I discovered over going through many appointments with my dad to make the process a lot less painful. So number one is some food. So typically at the hospital that me and my dad went to, is they do have some snacks, right? Which is fine. Like you can have those snacks, they can have these snacks if they really want to, but typically they're only junk food or things that my dad really didn't like. He felt within his own body didn't support his healing. So for that reason, we always just brought our own food. Like typically it would be like a few macadamia nuts, maybe a few almonds, something pretty healthy, but also it's a nice snack and really easy to have so that he wouldn't have to either go hungry or rely on the junk food. And junk food is the thing that he cut completely out of his diet. So really he would end up just going hungry if we didn't bring some food. Number two is something to drink. A lot of times, of course, probably any hospital will have some water. And in the hospital that we went to, they offered some milk as well. But my dad's lactose intolerant. And then also he didn't feel that it would be supportive of his healing. In the research that I've done, I agreed with him. And so he wanted to avoid all of that. But he didn't want to just drink the water or drink the coffee that isn't so great over there. So he just brought his own like little thermos with tea inside that he liked enjoy drinking. And then also it's like nice and warm. It's a bit comforting. He could drink that, stay hydrated while he's getting a treatment. And if you talk to your oncologist especially, they probably will recommend that you stay hydrated for whatever treatment that you're getting is probably a very good idea. And if you're doing things like chemo or immunotherapy or anything where you have to sit there and get some sort of infusion, then whenever they're doing that, they're probably going to be sitting there for a long time. So bringing that will be very helpful. And number three, along the same lines of being there for a long time, in the entire hospital, they have the thermostat set. Maybe sometimes it's a bit too warm, but a lot of the times it's a little bit chilly, right? At least what I found. And what that means is it's probably a good idea to bring a couple of layers in terms of something to wear so that you can stay most comfortable, that whoever you're caring for can stay most comfortable. A lot of times you can also, if you forgot to bring something for whatever reason, like you didn't bring the extra sweatshirt or you didn't bring the extra little jacket or little blanket, you can actually ask them. They will likely have blankets or even like heating packs that they'll give you. And a lot of times my dad will just ask for one of those so he could stay comfortable while he's sitting there. Sitting there and being uncomfortable is not conducive of health for you or anyone else. And the last one is a charger or battery pack. Again, these appointments are typically very long, and you probably will want to be able to access your phone, whether that is just to do your own thing, or if you want to access it to see your question log or take down some notes that maybe the oncologist mentioned, something that you want to note down so you don't forget. So make sure you just bring that battery pack. Maybe also bring a charger for your phone, because a lot of times they'll have some plugs nearby where you can charge. And that battery pack is just an emergency if there was no plugs for whatever reason. And also during this waiting time, and especially if it's the first appointment, you can actually start to organize your master question log right there and then on your phone, right? So that you're asking the most important questions first before any maybe time runs out with whatever your appointment is and the doctor has to leave, right? So food, drinks, something to keep you warm, and whoever you're caring for warm, a charger and or a battery pack. With this, you'll be most comfortable and prepared, both of you, everyone who's going to any appointments. So that is pretty much the end of getting started, of making sure you can get in this strategist role. The next part will be about how you can start to be long-term, stay healthy through this entire process so that you can be fully there for whoever you're caring for. If you're finding this video masterclass helpful right now, I actually do have one more thing for you, which is in the top link description, a free community that I created where I've broken this entire masterclass down into individual 5 to 10 minute videos so you can take it at your own time and also save your progress, start where you left off. On top of that, given it is a community, you can interact with everyone else there that is also in that similar role of a caregiver, someone else diagnosed with cancer, and they really want to support. You can share ideas, brainstorm. Plus, any resources that I mentioned in this video will all be there to download for free. And inside that community will be all the updates and additions I make to this protocol to make it more helpful later on. So if you do think that will be helpful for you, of course, you can just click that top link in the description and join completely for free. So this entire section will be about how to keep yourself from burning out, how to keep yourself completely stable so that you can provide the best help possible to whoever you're caring for in the long run. Because if you really think about it, right? Let's say you're in a desert, you're like stranded in the middle of the desert and you're dying of thirst. How can you help anyone else? If someone else comes out to you and says, "Oh, I'm dying of thirst," you have nothing to give them. Even if you had a drop of water, you're dying of thirst as well. You have nothing to give. Versus if you were able to fill yourself up, like maybe build some oasis somehow, now you have plenty of water to give to whoever comes by who is thirsty. So that's the same concept for when you're being a caregiver. If you really want to be the number one advocate, you really want to be that strategist to support the healing of whoever you're caring for, you have to make sure you yourself is filled up as most as possible with energy, with just emotional stability, so that that can all flow into whoever you're caring for. You can actually give because you have this abundance of energy within you. And I know I addressed the emotional stuff, but I know for a fact that a lot of different emotions are going to pop up depending on like, oh, scan results or a treatment day or like something else happened. Whatever events, new emotions are going to pop up along the way that you're going to have to deal with, whether that's fear or doubt or burnout or overwhelm or some frustration. I'm going to cover all of that. Fear. This is probably the first emotion that's going to pop up again over and over again. Every single time you get some piece of news, even if it's good news, you may have a fear like, oh, how long is this going to last? Or you may think like, oh, what can I really do? Am I really doing enough? The best possible thing you could do with fear is not ignore it. Don't ignore that fear. If you ignore that fear, it's going to get bottled up inside. It's going to keep just unconsciously pushing. And that emotion, that fear is just going to grow. And eventually it's going to take over and you're going to have a hard time actually caring for whoever you're caring for. So the thing is, acknowledge that fear. It's okay, right? It's okay if there's fearful. It's completely natural response to any new news, right? Then the thing is, now once you acknowledge it, okay, the fear might not go away. The fear might not go away. But the fact that you acknowledge it, now you can fill your own mind with what is really going to help. Because the fear is not helpful. You can start to ask, okay, what can I actually do? And then through taking whatever action that comes up into your mind, that is when the fear is going to start to fade over time. But even once you overcome fear, now you're starting to take action, right? Usually with the action, you have the new emotion come out. This emotion is uncertainty. So we're going to cover that next. Uncertainty. Every single action that you take, every single decision that you make and whoever you're caring for makes, every single decision or word that comes out of the oncologist's mouth in terms of suggestions, so whether that's a prescription or a new treatment or a new option from them, it's going to breed some uncertainty, right? Because if you just stayed status quo, of course, you know what is to come. Once you do something new, once you take that action, you don't know what's going to come. But here's the thing. Usually that uncertainty comes from a lack of clarity, both within yourself and whoever you're caring for, right? You'll be more uncertain about whatever you've done if you didn't do the research, if you didn't really know what are the pros, what are the cons of this option, this option, this option. You know all of them. And once you know all of them, then you decide, oh, okay, this. Most likely your uncertainty would be much lower than if alternatively, the oncologist was like, oh yeah, you should probably do this. And you just went for it. No research, no questions. And I know you won't do that, but if you want to clear the uncertainty as much as possible, both in you and whoever you're caring for, this is the process. It is number one, get all the options. And I'm telling you, literally all the options. And that's typically from the oncologist in terms of treatments or prescriptions for any other symptoms that whoever you're caring for may have, right? But you don't want to blindly trust your oncologist or anybody in the medical team, right? Never blindly trust anybody, whether that is medical or online or from anywhere else. You want to do the own research and put the whole picture together. So you get all the options from the oncologist, you get all the options from doing your own online research, reading books, reading articles, watching videos, and also, of course, never leave out whoever you're helping. Like they are the rule of their own body. They make the final decisions. You ask them, what do they think too? They may come up with some unique things, right? In terms of healing, because they know their own body the best. They are with their own body 24/7, right? So you take all of that information, make sure you have every single one. And okay, what are the pros? What are the cons? Again, going online, doing your research, asking the oncologist, and asking the opinion of whoever you're caring for. And once you have all that information, you lay it out particularly to the person you're caring for. Like I would lay it out to my dad once I have all this information. I would say, oh, okay, you could potentially do chemo, you could potentially do radiation, you could also do chemo plus radiation, you could do chemo plus radiation plus immunotherapy, you could do only immunotherapy. And that was actually a specific situation we were in at one point. And I also laid out to him, okay, the pros of this situation is this, and the cons of the situation is this, or this particular treatment option. And of course, all of these were approved by the oncologist and mentioned by them. Anyways, I laid it all out for them. I literally wrote it down. I wrote it in a document. They could see very clearly exactly what's going to happen in terms of what the actual research says. So then he was like, okay, in that particular situation, okay, we're going to go with chemo, or, oh, we're going to go with immunotherapy, and went through a lot of treatments. We essentially went through this process many times, and we chose different options each time, but each one had very low uncertainty, and he did not regret any of them because at least he himself was confident that that was the right choice at that time. And he was confident the upsides justified the downsides. The fact that we cleared that uncertainty made it so that both myself, him, everyone in the family, and honestly also the oncologists and all of the rest of the medical team could feel less stressed. And less stress, less uncertainty makes it so healing is much better for whoever you're caring for. But of course, even after you've taken that action, and even if you have no uncertainty at all because you laid it all out and you're really confident and they're really confident, everybody's really confident. When you start taking multiple actions, like different treatments, different maybe supplements that you're doing at home, you're changing your lifestyle, this is when you start to get overwhelmed. So that's what we're going to cover next. Overwhelm. Cancer care is absolutely complex, right? There's no doubt about that. Everybody will say cancer care is very complex. So when you're supporting the healing of whoever you're caring for, you're absolutely going to start to get overwhelmed because there are going to be so many actions that you're taking right now. And yes, you could be in a good place, but eventually that overwhelm takes a toll on you. It's very chaotic, right? And it starts to stress you out, and maybe it could cause you to burn out. And if you're burned out, of course, it's going to be very difficult for you to continue to help. So I have 3 really basic things that you can do that I've done pretty much throughout the year and a half with my dad, so you can have as little overwhelm as possible. So this is also a process that I used when I was, working for hedge funds and had a super basically high stress job. But it's 2 things. You one, have what I call a will do list, and number 2 is a to do list. So the will do list is sort of like that brain dump doc, but not about information. It is all the things that you will actually do, all the actions that you're actually going to take. Like, you have to go buy this item from the store to make sure the nutrition is right. Do you have to buy this supplement? Do you have to buy like this electrolyte? Do you have to buy like a certain clothing? Do you have to go like help whoever you're caring for pick up a particular subscription, right? And not only do you have stuff just about their cancer care, in my will-do list, I had everything in my entire life. And maybe you have your own kind of task organization system. You could actually use that as well, because I myself, I just throw it all on a doc because that's easiest for me. But if you have a system that works for you, like maybe you use Notion, for example, or maybe you use some other note-taking app, to-do list app, you can use those as well. But what I find is effective now, as I mentioned, is the will-do list. What it does is it keeps you from being overwhelmed, because you don't have to hold all of those things that you're going to do in your head. And then you have also the to-do list. These are very different things. Keep in mind, they do very different functions. Now, the to-do list is actually what you're going to do today and only today. You can almost call it like a 2-day list. Why that also helps reduce overwhelm, right? Is now when you're going and actually doing stuff. If you were going into the will-do list all the time, you see like that mountain of things that you need to do. And half of those things, you can't even act on them right now because, like, let's say task 1 is blocking task 2. So seeing task 2 is just kind of just weighs on you mentally. So instead you have the to-do list and you only put like task 1 on there or some other tasks that you can actually do. And you can leave all those things that you can't do out of your mind to just really stay focused. And by doing that, you also, of course, most effectively take action for whoever you're caring for. For me and my dad, like I did all this on my own, right? I never had him like update my to-do list or will do list or anything like that. Of course, I went and asked him like, oh, like, do you need anything right now? And if it was like a real task, I would just jot it down. But I kept that all away from him because he doesn't need to worry about what the hell is going on, right? He needs to just, fight that battle inside to heal. So you keep this to yourself. You keep all this organization to yourself. And if you need some input from them, you just ask them questions. It's a lot easier for them to answer a direct question than it is to worry about like, oh, I need to do task 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Even if they're not doing it themselves. And the second thing that just complements this will do and to-do list is a calendar. So most likely you probably have a Google account, maybe you use Google Calendar. Just pop on the appointments on there. The appointments are already on there probably. But if you do other things, like maybe if whoever you're caring for, like my dad, he takes certain medications at certain times. He does his exercise at certain times. He wants to sleep at a certain time. He does his meals at a certain time. So we just built out a weekly schedule on the calendar. So he just reminded all the time, never has to worry about. So he also lowers that overwhelm from the calendar. And then in your own calendar, if there's like reoccurring things, like if you have a subscription for a certain supplement that he's taking, like my dad, he has some supplements that he's taking. And I will talk about supplement research later, but right now, let me just focus on the actual overwhelm. If you have a subscription, you have to handle that subscription. Well, just note on your calendar one specific day that like, oh, I'll handle all the subscriptions, handle all the bills on that day. So you're never worrying about it. Because I remember previously, like years ago when I didn't have this sort of system, and this was just in my own life handling regular bills. But when I didn't have it, I would like constantly checking like, oh, do I have like money to pay this bill? Did I transfer the money into the right place? And I'll be checking. No. Just keep it on one day, have a recurring event that reminds you on the calendar, and then you can handle it then. And the third thing is just a simple shopping list. Okay. You're probably going to be changing the nutrition in certain ways. Well, you want to have a good shopping list so you don't forget a thing, right? Like for my dad, he always eats some nutritious meats every single day from a local farm that we have. By the way, I'll get into specific diets later on and how you can choose what's right for you. But my dad landed on the meat and being very high quality from a local farm. But the thing is, if we didn't have that shopping list right, we didn't have what we need to buy right and keep track of what is in the refrigerator, things like that. If he were to run out, well, now he's missing a huge part of his diet or has to compromise with something else. So by having that shopping list and keeping like a status on it, like, oh, like this is low, we should order this, or this is good, we just ordered this, and then probably a note on where you should get it, then we would just I would have to constantly remember like, oh, I got to get this and get this. And then I would forget and then we miss out. And that would, of course, affect the healing of my dad. So the shopping list, I mean, you probably know how to make a shopping list, right? It's super simple. You write all the things that you need and be comprehensive here. Instead of like a normal shopping list where I would add it on the fly, it's like a master shopping list of everything that we always buy. And I can just tick off whether like, oh, we've already bought it or we need to go get it. And I'll probably just link it as a resource below. If I haven't linked it for whatever reason, you can just send me a message and I'll get something together. Now with this, you can get rid of overwhelm, but you still actually might burn out because you maybe have a job, you maybe have to actually do a lot of things. Like there was a point when my dad, during chemo or radiation, he was so weak. I literally had to like bring water over to him. I had to like help him walk over to the bathroom if he needed to get up. That takes a lot of energy. I know these are simple things and you might try to convince yourself like, oh, like, why am I so weak? But we want to prevent that as much as possible so you can stay there and always be able to help. So that's what we're going to cover next. So burnout. This is actually probably the most important thing that you need to prevent in yourself. Because if you're burned out, ultimately what that is you have run out of energy. And energy, by definition, is the ability to do work, the ability to do things, the ability to help whatever it is you're caring for. If you are burned out, you are no longer helpful. Your mind doesn't work right. You may be falling asleep while they're doing something. So you might not be safe for you to drive them to the appointment. Or let's say you fall asleep and they needed something urgently, but well, you're asleep. You can't help them. So what is the fundamentals to keep this burnout away? Absolutely. Prioritize over anything else. Literally anything. Do not do anything before this. Is your own sleep, your own nutrition, and your own exercise. Sleep, eat, exercise. That is the fundamentals. Literally before anything else. Like don't skip drinking water because you need to do something else, right? Don't do that. Just drink the water first. Just think about how much time this stuff takes. It doesn't take a lot of time to keep your self fundamentally healthy. And you might think like, oh, but I need to do this thing for whoever I'm caring for. But here's the thing. If you push these things off for long enough, in the long term, you're not going to be able to help them when they need it most. So just do this first. Take the time, take care of yourself. Again, like I said in the beginning, if your glass is full, you're able to help fill other people's glasses. So, and why I specifically like this 3 words, sleep, eat, exercise, is because think, right? SEEC. By doing these 3 things, you're, as a strategist, going to be able to see the path forward, see the path for whoever you're caring for. That is going to be most conducive to helping them heal and helping their treatments work, as well as, of course, recovering from any hard treatments as best as you can get it. And I'm actually going to go in module 4, super in depth about the sleeping, eating, exercise, even down to like very, very, very small things. And I'm not going to tell you anything about what to do. I'm going to give you something even better. I'm going to give you how you can actually decide what specifically works for you. Because again, just like the cancer is individual for whoever you're caring for, you are individual to everyone else in the world. So whatever health protocols that help support you in not burning out and them also to heal from the cancer is also individual. So instead, I'll give you the process, the frameworks you can use in your mind, the protocol you can use in your mind to find that thing for you. But of course, before we get into it, we still have to cover the rest of keeping yourself in a state that is most conducive of the person healing. So next part is frustration, which is like, oh, they're not doing the thing that you know is healthy for them. And that gets you frustrated, right? But if you get frustrated with the person you're caring for, of course, that is not conducive of them healing. So that is what we're going to cover next. Frustration. It would come up in me when I know my dad is continuously doing something that is actively against his own healing, but he keeps doing it for whatever reason. Of course, I'm going to want to tell him like, oh, why do you keep doing that? Or like, no, you shouldn't do that. And he just keeps doing it. So of course, kind of bad thoughts start to crop up in you, the caregiver, like I myself. Things would come into my mind like, oh, like whatever, he can do whatever he wants. But that's not helpful, right? That's just self-serving to you. If you really want to help them, you have to get rid of this frustration. But how can you do that? Like, for example, on my dad, sleep is really good for you, right? And he knew sleep is good for him, and I know sleep is good for him. But he would like do dumb things in order to only sleep like maybe 6 hours a night for a good while. And I was like, oh, why don't you just sleep more? Or like, why do you just stay up and like watch the news instead of sleeping? And just like wake up super early for no reason and then watch the news or like turn on some lights and eat some random stuff. Why can't you just go to sleep? And he was like, oh, I can't. I want to watch the news, something like that. And for honestly a while, like probably a couple weeks in total, this kept going on. But then eventually I actually got rid of my frustration, and hopefully this will help you get rid of it faster than I did. But I asked him like, okay, well, why are you actually getting up in the first place? And why are you actually watching the news? Like, what do you feel you're getting out of it? Or like, for what reason are you not going to sleep? And through having this conversation with him and really just meeting him where he is at, trying to understand his point of view rather than thinking from my own mind that just stuck on like, oh, just sleep, right? It's so simple. I actually started to understand, like, first of all, this was after radiation, his mouth is really dry. And he didn't tell me that, and that would wake him up. And then he thought like, oh, I have nothing else to do while I'm drinking, might as well watch the news. But eventually, now understanding his real problem, not that he didn't want to sleep, but that his mouth was dry and he had nothing else to do during that morning. What I did was walk him through like, oh, well, what else could you be doing to solve those problems? And then he eventually agreed with me that it was better to just keep a bottle of water near him so he could help hydrate his mouth if he were to ever wake up, and to make it so that he could fall back to sleep easier, not do the news. He enjoys doing some like light stretching and also meditation. So he would actually start to do that instead. And you know what happened? Literally the day right after we both decided on that, of course, I was happy that he stopped doing all those things and stopped trying to destroy his sleep. And then, you know what? He actually slept better right away. He was like, oh yeah, just doing this instead, I was able to fall right back to sleep. And you know what? I asked him I asked him pretty much every single day, how do you feel in terms of energy? And he's like, oh yeah, I was feeling energized, feeling pretty strong. So, and I know I said a lot here, but let me give you essentially the 3 things that I did. Was 1, meet them where they're at, right? Ask them questions, try to really understand their point of view and make whatever it is that you want to help them do to be supportive of their health as easy as possible. And of course, just make sure whatever you're going to have them do is also supported by your medical team. I mean, sleep's always good, right? But if it's something else that you have any questions about, make sure to always ask them. You essentially should be following the rule as well. Same as the doctors, is do no harm as the number 1 rule. Number 2 is, if they're not doing it still for whatever reason, like me, myself, I would go and actually do the thing. Like if it was sleep, for example, I would sleep well and show him that like, oh, when I sleep well, I'm also getting this particular result. I'm feeling more energized. I'm looking better in terms of being rested. And he was like, oh, you know what? He's right. I should probably get my sleep as well. So lead by example. And last one is really, really understanding their why. Why are they not doing it? Why are they doing this other thing? Why are they not following the recommendations from the oncologist? And it could be just something stupid, and you can help fix that, because they don't just not do things for no reason. There's something inside, even if they're not telling you. Now, even if you can clear all of these things, it takes a lot of time, and you will find that at certain times, you may not have enough time to go through this process and actually have enough time to support their healing as much as possible. So that's what we're going to cover next, is an actual lack of time. How to deal with that feeling or that knowing of I have no time. if you have no time, if you lack time, it's probably because something to do with your job, which is taking up all your time. And ideally, you would like to just take some time off, but you're not really sure how you can do this. Or maybe you get distracted, honestly. Like doom scrolling is still a problem, right? It doesn't go away even if suddenly someone you know has gotten a cancer diagnosis. Or just maybe you have a lot of things going on. So let me give you 3 things that you can use right now. And I actually did use myself in order to get as much time as possible so that I could dedicate it to them healing. Number 1 is trying to find time off from your job. So I was working as a senior equity analyst at a big consulting firm. I literally worked 80 hours a week. I'm not even joking. A lot of the times I would come back home when the sun is coming up the next day. And that was a common occurrence. And I would still wake up maybe around like 8 o'clock and drive in when the sun's kind of just coming up the next day. So first thing that I did was just work remote, because I typically went into the office. I asked if I could just stay remote for a little while. And that's what I did in the beginning, to just at least be around for my dad and support him if he needed little things. Number 2 is I took time off. So I used some vacation time right away when he had like his first appointments so I could go with him. And number 3, in terms of the job, is this is what I did long term, is I'll have some resources actually linked. If you're in the US, this will probably apply to you. If you're not in the US, then just look for something similar, okay? But my job specifically had a family medical leave type of act. And also the US government does have a family medical leave act. Essentially what it is you get an application either from your employer, you work with HR to get that, or you get the application from the government and you fill out this piece of paper, you bring it to the oncologist and have them sign it. And what it'll allow you to do is take a certain amount of time off. For me, it was about 3 months, I believe, fully off and also paid through this program to just fully dedicate on taking care of my dad. Now, last one is to deal with just sort of wasting your time, like doom scrolling, for example, or just getting distracted by anything or going down rabbit holes in research that you know are not as helpful as something else that you could be doing. Is I like to just keep a very simple rule. First, maximize, then optimize. So list out all the things that you typically do in your day, whether like I doom scroll, I go to the gym, I like eat, I prepare food, I maybe still work my job, right? The maximizing is like, okay, do I really need to go to the gym, or would I be okay with just doing a home workout so I can cut out like maybe an extra hour by not doing that? Or if I'm doom scrolling, well, of course, you don't need to doom scroll. So how do you maximize that? You delete your apps, right? And you probably won't even miss deleting it. And then now once you've gotten to a list, like you really think these are the essential things that you need to do, then that is when you optimize it. So you go into like, oh, every day I prepare a meal. Well, how can you make that meal preparation faster? Like, is there a certain way that I could cook it differently? Is there certain things I could prepare beforehand? Could I just cook something different but still had the same effect? And you go through, again, that entire essentials list that you have. And that's now you have not only a fully maximized list of things that you do, but also optimized, like in terms of like a daily schedule. You're taking time off in the short term. In the longer term, you're seeing if you can go through one of these programs where you could take extended time off. And even longer term, you're finding ways to just reduce the waste in the time of your day. No matter how small, it'll be helpful. So this is the end of the role that you should take, and then how you can also stay in that role as long as possible to be the most helpful and supportive to healing of whoever you're caring for. So next is how to organize and also ask questions. So not only can you get the best research, get the best information in order to help them heal, but also to be able to pull out the information for whoever you're talking to again, best support that healing of the one that you want to help heal. Your number one tool as the caregiver, as the number one advocate, as the strategist to support the healing is to guide, not decide. It is actually how to ask effective questions so you can get to the root of how you can go forward in terms of what are the potential things that you could do that would promote healing as much as possible within the body of the person that you're trying to help. So I will say it again. The number one rule is to guide, not decide. You are laying everything out for everyone, whether that is the medical team, whether that is the person that you're actually caring for, laying everything out so that with clarity, with as little regret as possible, later on, decide for themselves what is right. Because ultimately, remember, that person you're caring for, they are the ruler. They are the person that owns their own body. They are the one who's actually fighting the battle. So they are the one that should make the final decision. And there's a couple of protocols for that, and it's specifically what I'm going to show you in the following videos. So again, I mentioned clarity makes it so you can confidently make a decision, that they can confidently make a decision, everyone can confidently make a decision and not later on regret that decision. The more clarity you can get, always the better. So here are essentially the 5 questions that you can ask that create as much clarity as possible. First is who to ask or where to look. So in the beginning, whenever you're deciding anything, whenever you're dropped in any situation at all, you're going to be wondering what you don't know. There's a lot of stuff that you don't know that you don't know. So you have to start somewhere. And that usually is, okay, where can I find out where the actual source is that I can actually see what I don't know? Like I am in this situation and you look online and you see like, okay, what are the potential actions that you could take based on that? You go to the oncologist, right? You go to whoever your doctor is and you say like, oh, okay, if I were to do this or we're facing this particular problem, what do you think we should do here? And they'll either point you to the right place or maybe they will be the right person in the first place. And they can tell you like, oh, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, right? Like for my dad, right? When he was on chemo, he was having trouble eating actually. And we didn't really know what to do. We went to the oncologist and they would ask him, or we asked him, or I asked him like, oh, what do you think? And you know what? He actually suggested like, oh, actually, you can just make an appointment with this nutritionist and they can recommend a whole bunch of things. So that's what we did. And they recommended a whole bunch of things. My dad tried it and it worked pretty well for him. But to actually make that decision, you have the second question, which is what is insert thing? So even after you know what you don't know, but now you actually have to define what thing that you don't know. If I go back to the example of different treatment options like chemo versus radiation versus like immunotherapy versus like a combination of them, I don't really know what this chemotherapy is, right? Like what are the pros and cons of it? In this particular case, I knew that I needed to ask the oncologist. So I asked them. So now I defined what this is, what this is, what this is. I know what each is. And to go even further, now that I know what this is, like, oh, chemo is this particular drug. In my case, my dad got cisplatin, so it's actually a heavy metal. Or really, in other situations, not talking about treatments, like, oh, what is this thing in his blood labs? Like, what is this ALC? Well, it's absolute lymphocyte count. That's his immune system, one of the parts of his immune system. I defined it. Now I know what it is. So next thing to ask is really, okay, well, what are the actual implications of this thing? If we go back to the chemo example, okay, what are the pros? What are the cons? And then if you like radiation, what are the pros? What are the cons? Radiation plus chemo, what are the pros? What are the cons? Staying only on immunotherapy, what are the pros? What are the cons? And I know I'm very repetitive here, but it is a process that you have to go through. This is what I actually went through so that I could then lay it out for my dad. And then not only that, you still don't even stop there. So what are the places that you can look for things? It's like your medical team, you can look online, you can, again, ask whoever you're caring for. Whatever the source of the information is for whatever you're trying to research right now, you ask, what else? What else? What does that do? Okay. Your oncologist, say, for example, he laid out all these treatment options. And typically he would just stop at what he thinks is the best. But you could ask now, even after all like the pros and cons, everything, like my dad didn't like those options or whoever you're caring for doesn't like those options. If you ask what else, well, they honestly probably have another option, but they just didn't mention it for whatever reason. Still might be something that you were interested in because you haven't actually looked into it yet, or whoever you're caring for might be interested in after they learn more about it. And that closes the gaps in what you already know. And okay, you have a full picture now. You know the whole landscape of the potential decision that you're going to present to whoever you're caring for. Now, what do you do? With the person that you're caring for, let's say you wrote it on a piece of paper like I did for my dad's different treatment options. This is literally a picture now of the full landscape. So we sit there and we talk together, we discuss, I help explain to him all the information. Like I don't force him to read it. Like I'll literally just walk him through it, right? Take the time. And we specifically comparing like, oh, if we do this option, then this will happen versus this option. Like, oh, this option has actually maybe a better benefit. This option actually has a downside that I don't like. You compare different parts of the picture. And of course, these are all things that are also green lighted by the medical team. The final call goes to who you're caring for. Again, that ruler of they're the ruler of their own body, they're of the country that is fighting those like rebel cancers. So they make the final decision and you go with it. Whatever it is, you go with it because it is not your decision to make. But you created this clarity now through this whole process so that they can make a very good decision for themselves. But now you're very clear on this information, right? You know so much about whatever you're evaluating. You can feel the need to decide for them. Like you know what is better than them. They don't know the information. But remember, your goal is to guide, not decide. It is up to them eventually. That is going to get the best outcome, seriously. Because what happens if you chose wrong for them? You're going to be regret. They're going to be regret. They're going to be frustrated. It's just going to cause very bad things. So what I'm going to talk about next is specifically how to guide, not decide. So how to guide, not decide. Make sure that there's no rift that gets cut between you and whoever you're caring for because you try to like force a decision on them. No, there's 3 different types of questions that you can ask, and I'll give you a comparison of how to ask it bad and how to ask it good. So first one is, don't you think you should? And you like insert some sort of action, right? Think about this. It's a leading action. Like if you said, oh, don't you think you should sleep more? It's kind of hostile, right? You're saying like, oh yeah, go sleep more. It's not even really a question versus what do you think you should do? Or, right? What do you think? It's totally open-ended. He could say like, oh, I just need to stay up right now or because whatever reason, right? And okay, I mean, you can address that. Most likely inside, he'll know deep down if he really thinks about it, like my dad, right? He would say like, oh yeah, I think I probably need some more sleep. Like they know what's inside. They know, okay? But for whatever reason, they might be ignoring it. So you ask that open-ended question to uncover the real reason why they are not doing things or maybe why they're uncertain about things or whether they're confused about something, and then you address it then. The second thing is, but you are this thing. Doesn't that mean you should do this thing? It's like saying like, oh yeah, look, you're losing weight. You should eat more. Or look, you're losing weight. Shouldn't you eat more? I'm not putting him in a place where he can decide himself. By that question, I'm actually telling him like, oh yeah, you're losing weight. I'm putting this label on him, and then I'm telling him to do something because of the label that I placed on him. He may not even believe that he has that label of like, oh, I'm losing too much weight, right? So for you in your situation, what is better, and what I did with my dad is asking, how do you feel, right? And this starts to, again, just like that, like what do you think? It uncovers what they're feeling inside. It's like, oh, I feel low energy, or oh, I feel like I'm not eating enough, or I feel something, right? And then you address that then. The body, it wants to heal. It wants to get better. And you know that they want to get better, right? Like my dad, he wants to heal, but sometimes he doesn't know, he doesn't realize. And these types of questions will start to open that up within his own mind for him. And he always goes towards what is right for him. And the third one is, aren't you going to? Like you already decided on something. He said he's already going to do this thing, but then for whatever reason, he didn't do it. You're like, oh, aren't you going to actually eat that thing? Or like, oh, aren't you going to just get better? Aren't you going to heal? Aren't you going to do your exercise? It's presented in a way, again, where you're almost forcing something on them. They said they're going to do it. They want to do it, but for some reason that's stopping you. So they're being stopped. Instead, you can ask them a question like, what would you like to do? Or you can go back to the things like, oh, is there a reason that you didn't do this? Start to really understand what it is inside them, and then you address it. Usually it's not the thing itself, it's something else. But in their mind, they're stuck on the thing and they're like, oh yeah, I just can't do it. So you have to get to the root. Oh, what do you think? What do you feel? What would you like to do? Comes from within. All open-ended questions. You can start to guide, not decide for anyone. But of course, you can't guide if you don't have the information yourself. If you actually don't know what the hell's going on, of course, you can't be an effective guide. So the next video is going to be about how to actually organize and interpret data for whatever research that you're doing. Organizing and interpreting data. Of course, if you interpret data better, that's going to mean you making better, more supportive decisions, and that's going to feed down into whoever you're caring for to make their final decision. But of course, number one rule, medical data, like you're getting scans, you're getting blood work. Who's the best person to ask here? Golden rule, number one rule, never break this rule. The best person to ask is your medical team. If your medical team is not good for whatever reason, I know I'll go into more detail about it later, but you get a second opinion, right? Always have some sort of medical team, some sort of medical professional that is qualified and knows the person you're caring for's medical history to interpret the data. You don't do this yourself. But of course, you're probably going to have specific questions about certain things. So also, let me tell you about how to ask the questions to the medical professionals. And on top of interpreting actual medical data, how do you actually do your own research, organize that, and then find the things, the actions that you could potentially take from that? For the medical data, right? Scans, number one. You're probably going to see both an interpretation from, let's say, the radiologist or the oncologist. Somebody is going to have an interpretation they're going to give you, usually within a couple of days of doing the scan. Read that first. But of course, it's going to be full of tons of medical jargon. You're going to not know what the hell is going on. So you can ask intelligent questions. You can try to just search these things up on Google, of course. Maybe get the help from AI and specifically tell the AI, can you put this in plain English for me at like a 5th grade level or something? So it's just like super simple. And on top of that, of course, if it is a scan, right, you're probably going to have a picture. And it's really hard to actually interpret pictures by themselves. Of course, like if you see a scan, you can see like a tumor, right? And maybe you can clearly see it like, oh, this is a tumor, this is not. Maybe. What is helpful is just comparative. You can see like, oh, I saw this in this scan versus I saw this in this scan. And what that allows you to do, again, that pictures are very easy to understand. At least, you can just clearly see it. That allows you to bring very good questions to your oncologist whenever you talk to them next. And again, just write these questions down, right? It is not your job to interpret it. It is their job. That is literally what they trained for. They trained over basically a decade to be able to interpret these things. So just bring your questions. And also remember with the AI, make sure you're using the AI to formulate your questions. A lot of the time AI is pretty dumb, right? But if you just ask it instead to allow you to come up with more questions, that's a very good use of it. Help you kind of brainstorm. And number two is blood work. Things that don't have pictures. For example, my dad, he always gets his blood work every single time he has an appointment, right? How do you make sense of that for yourself? And then also bring good questions. So a very good example is actually, he always gets his immune system numbers done because he's taking immunotherapy. So there's a specific number called ALC. And this particular number has been low for him for a while in the past. And actually, it is quite low right now. But when we see that, we're like, oh, low must mean bad. That means that is a question, right? That's a question that I want to ask. Like, oh, what does this number mean? It seems like it's low. But to form an even better question, luckily inside the medical portal that my dad has for the hospital that we go to, it gives you the historical data. So from his old blood test. Actually, so his old blood test had this ALC, the absolute lymphocyte count. It was even lower. So we could see like, oh, we asked the doctor two questions now. What does this number mean in the fact that it is low? And number two, I see that it is going up. Is that a positive sign? And actually, for my dad particularly, yes, that is a positive sign. And for him in his situation, it made sense for it to be low because he had just gotten radiation, which lowers it. He had gotten chemo, which lowers it. And even the immunotherapy that he was getting lowers it as well. But so the fact that it was going up, that's a decent sign. And that's what the medical team said. And of course, this is the process, right? This is the process that you need to go through in terms of thinking, interpreting things. And if we want to talk about just doing your own research, right? Let's say you want to research some sort of supplement or research a new diet, same rule applies. Bring your questions to the medical team. Of course, you can just Google around, find all the information that you want, and then bring those questions. But the reason why you specifically have to bring them the questions, because different treatments, they have different things that you like interactions with certain things that if you were to take that supplement, let's say, or do that action, it could interfere with the treatment. And that's also, of course, not conducive of good health. So, for example, radiation, and this is a pretty known thing, and of course, talk with your radiologist, but my dad, he was taking turmeric and he wanted to take some like turmeric supplements, but they told him, okay, during radiation, don't take those because it has like antioxidant properties, could interfere with the treatment. So in a situation like that, so helpful, right? And if you had not went and did this process, you would have missed that and you could have interfered with the treatment. So always check with medical team. That is how you actually interpret and organize data. It's really about those questions and getting the right answer from the right source. Now, this is the last part of actually how to play your role as the caregiver, as the number one advocate, as the strategist for the person you're caring for's battle. The next part is how to actually work with your different allies in this battle. So the medical team, the online researchers, the AI, and like actually, let's say, how to find the best medical team, how to work with this medical team. All that's in there. And on top of that, I want to have a deep dive in AI because it is very dangerous if you don't use it correctly. I want to go much more in detail about it. If you're finding this video masterclass helpful right now, I actually do have one more thing for you, which is in the top link description, a free community that I created where I've broken this entire masterclass down into individual 5 to 10 minute videos so you can take it at your own time and also save your progress, start where you left off. On top of that, given it is a community, you can interact with everyone else there that is also in that similar role of a caregiver, someone else diagnosed with cancer, and they really want to support. You can share ideas, brainstorm. Plus, any resources that I mentioned in this video will all be there to download for free. And inside that community will be all the updates and additions I make to this protocol to make it more helpful later on. So if you do think that will be helpful for you, of course, you can just click that top link in the description and join completely for free. My process for navigating the medical matrix, which is insanely complex, and how to actually best leverage them so that whoever you're caring for gets the best healing that they can, gets the best treatments, works with the best medical team possible for them. To start off, I want to give you the core principles that you should always operate within to make sure that you're most effectively using your allies in this battle. So, one is seek to understand. Never blindly trust. I know I mentioned this before, but I have to mention it again because it's so important. If you blindly trust, right, that means you didn't do the research. You don't really know what you're doing, the implications of whatever action that you suggested or whatever action that whoever you're caring for eventually decides on. And if you don't know, you could have things that you end up regretting because you just didn't know it was going to happen. But you could have easily found out if you simply dug into whatever that medical professional was saying a little bit more. And honestly, this rule can be flipped around a little bit. So if whoever you're working with, the medical professionals, like, oh yeah, just do this. Why do you ask so many questions? Or like, why do you need to understand this? Or, oh yeah, you're not going to get it. If they don't really focus on trying to understand your questions, make sure that you feel most comfortable with your decision. That's an indicator that you may want to get another opinion or maybe even move to another medical professional that's more professional essentially, right? Number 2 is be able to articulate, not prescribe or diagnose. Your job is never to prescribe or diagnose. Literally, by definition, you are not allowed to prescribe or diagnose anything. That is up to the medical professionals. That is literally what they were trained for. They trained like almost a decade for this, at least the doctors, right? So they can prescribe or diagnose. Here's the thing though. What does this mean to articulate? Well, right? You're with your parent, sibling, whatever, whoever you're caring for, right? Like I'm with my dad, basically the other 23 hours of the day that I'm not in the doctor's office. The doctor only sees him for maybe 1 hour, maybe. So being able to articulate what has happened, what is the actual status of my dad, allows them to tweak whatever they recommend, whatever they're prescribing, whatever they're diagnosing much better. Right? If they have a super clear picture of exactly the symptoms that we're seeing at home, of course, they can diagnose better. And then that means they can just prescribe better. That means they can maybe even tweak the treatments to be more conducive of healing, right? And number 3, the rule is the allies are absolutely necessary. You literally can't do this without a medical team. It's literally impossible. You're going to lose access to your prescriptions. You're going to lose access to their knowledge. You're going to lose access to the treatment options. It's impossible. impossible to do this without medical professionals. And I know some people out there that are like hostile against traditional medicine, but you don't have to be. Find the medical team that will work with you, right? There's definitely bad doctors out there, but don't discount all of them, right? Find the one that is good and then work with them. That's going to give you the best chance. So seek to understand, don't blindly trust, be able to articulate, not prescribe or diagnose, and the allies are absolutely necessary. In the next part, I'm going to talk about what are the different types of allies. So essentially their definitions, their roles that they can play for you, so that if you don't already have a full medical team built out, maybe you can seek out some of these medical teams that you feel might be helpful in your situation for whoever you're caring for. With this, you'll know exactly what medical professionals that you could potentially seek out and their general role and how they can slot in for you. And I'm just going to sort of list them all out here, and then I'll give a brief definition. So number one is, of course, doctors. This is like your oncologist, right? This is your primary care doctor. And especially the oncologists, of course, they're the ones that are going to do the chemo, the immunotherapy, all that stuff. And most likely, all these different types of doctors that are at least going towards the more conventional treatments, they're all probably going to be in whatever hospital that you choose. And just a general rule of thumb, so you know who to talk to. And honestly, just knowing the oncologist alone will be very helpful because they can guide you to the right person. But even if you don't have an oncologist right now, you just have a primary care doctor, they can start to guide you to, if you have a very good one, to the right person to find treatment. But based on my 1.5 years of experience, this is generally how the doctors operate, what expertise they have. So you also have an idea to, when you work with any of these people, ask if certain people might be helpful for you. So the radiologists, of course, they have to do with the doing radiation treatment or analyzing the different scans that you take. The oncologist typically would be with different treatments like chemo, immunotherapy, and then suggesting different other treatments. And also the oncologist will likely be the one to prescribe anything that you need to take for whatever treatment that he recommended. And your primary care, probably after the initial diagnosis, will not really have much in play, right? Of course, you probably, at least my dad, he still gets his checkups with that primary care doctor, but he's, of course, less of a specialist in cancer. You know, he's not specialized, actually, if you really think about it. So always go to your oncologist for that. The next thing is a nutritionist. So a lot of the times when my dad was having trouble eating certain things, or like particularly during radiation, he has this like kind of sores in his mouth, and honestly during chemo as well. So the oncologist would recommend to the nutritionist. And of course, if you didn't have this nutritionist, right, you wouldn't have this option. Just at least know to ask if like is an option to talk to them in your possible. If not, maybe find one externally. Number 3 is naturopaths, I believe you call them. We personally don't have one because my dad didn't feel like it was necessary for him. But essentially what they are, naturopaths, or sometimes you call them NDs or naturopathic doctors, they're a little bit more integrative in the way that they treat medicine. So not only do they specifically study and they are board certified, they're actually medical professionals. They study all those conventional treatments. They also look into like diet, maybe different things like fasting or keto, or maybe herbal supplements. So it could be very helpful to guide you on less conventional things from an actual real medical professional, right? That knows the interactions with all these things even better than maybe your oncologist. But the key is to find a very good one that is specialized also in cancer. If you do want to go that route, then physical therapy. My dad actually has a friend who's a physical therapist. When he has like movement problems, like say he had some tumors in his hip and he was like getting really stiff, and he also had problems in his back getting really stiff. Sometimes he would just ask his friend like, oh, what could I do here? And I personally just did a lot of research here, and the oncologist basically said, oh yeah, it's fine. Do any movement you like. Just don't like go jumping around, go crazy, right? So I would just simply recommend. So my dad doesn't have a physical therapist, again, because of those two things, but they will help you with sort of mobility, or they could help you with mobility. I don't know what number we're on, but the next one is a chiropractor. Of course, make sure it's okay with the oncologist, but there are chiropractors that are like specifically specializing in cancer that can help kind of relieve some maybe pains that comes from the cancer or stiffness in the body, maybe certain things that are wrong with the skeletal system. Of course, clear it with everybody. Make sure everybody's in communication in the medical team, but that is one other person. And then other allies, of course, are other caregivers. Who else in your family is trying to help? Of course, I am the main one. I'm the main one for my dad. But my mom wants to help, right? Of course, obviously. My brother wants to help. But the key here is not to like fight with each other, right? What role does each person play and how can they all fit together? Try to figure that out for yourself. That is the definition of other caregivers. Your next ally is AI. So I know AI is not a person. AI is also not a medical professional. But the golden rule, or like the one rule principle that you should follow with AI, is always use it for idea generation, never to decide on anything. AI is stupid with recommendations, but it's really good at just doing the research, combing through thousands of papers and just pulling everything out, right? And then you can read through maybe those like could be 100 options, but then you filter it with your like real human brain, and then you also bring that to your medical team, and then they can do it filtered with their medical knowledge. And then the final filter, again, is the person who actually has the cancer. They can make the final decision. Two last allies, just online resources and books. Of course, AI is going to help with the online resources. Videos, I think, are very helpful. Of course, there are other researchers, doctors out there, and I'll have all this stuff linked. I have a library that I'll have some of the top resources that I saw myself, and particularly the ones that I saw right in the beginning, probably about the first 2 weeks, and the books that I recommend that you should read, again, probably within the first 2 weeks. And the books in particular is to like really cover a broad spectrum of information and how other people have went through this battle of cancer. So then, first of all, you can see all those options and then really decide what works for you. And then secondly, of course, you can see other people's outcomes and start to see that there really is something that you can help on. This was the definition of everybody. The next part is going to be actually how to find these allies, how to find good medical professionals, find good information, how to find these allies or your medical professionals, whether that is you realize your medical professional is really not helpful and you want to switch to another one, whether that is you want to get a second opinion, whether that is you want to get a different type of treatment that your hospital doesn't offer. This is the process that I use myself. Because we did get one time my dad was evaluating different types of radiation. We did work with multiple hospitals and then eventually choose the one that we thought was right. So number one actually in the process is finding a good hospital. So how you do that, and this is going to be more in the US, like you can go to websites like this. They do kind of an evaluation and then they compile all the data of all the different hospitals, and you could probably just go through this top list and find one that is near you and seemingly does very good care. So if you're not in the US, and of course, if you're doing your own research, don't just rely on that one website. I believe it's from US News, but seriously, go on Google, search up, like the best cancer care in whatever area that you're in. Read through some of their articles, read through some of their outcomes, read through maybe even look at like the types of advertisement that they do. These specific doctors for that specific cancer that you were diagnosed with and the treatments that they specialize in. And then once you're confident going through all that information, then you give them a call and then you really start to like, you meet with them, get a consultation, start to feel like, okay, is this person really going to be helpful? Or maybe should I seek somebody else's opinion? And of course, again, the person you're caring for, the person who actually has the cancer makes the final decision. But typically, good hospitals will have a collection of also good medical professionals. So that is the first step. Find a good hospital. And now, to drive on the point even more, and I mentioned this right in the beginning of don't blindly trust, is absolutely get a second opinion, right? If you're going through a decision that's going to be very difficult, then get a second opinion from a different oncologist or some other medical professional. And whoever you're working with, if they are a good medical professional, they're not going to mind at all, right? They want what is best for you, what is going to be most healing for you. So if you can talk to somebody else, get more information, and then confidently make a decision, of course, they're going to be supportive of that if they're a good medical professional. So absolutely get those second opinions if you're unsure at all. And second opinions doesn't mean just from medical professionals, right? It means get the opinions of your family, get the opinions of people online, And of course, the medical professionals, you have to get it cleared by them. And then, I can't say this enough, get it cleared by the person who actually has the cancer. But it is about getting all those diverse ideas to make sure, again, you're getting that full picture that I talked about before in your role essentially as a strategist. And now, last thing that I want to leave you with is when to search for more options or when to search for a different medical professional. If that medical professional is dismissive to you, doesn't answer your questions, just tells you, oh, blindly trust me, or, they're probably not going to say that specifically, but just like, oh yeah, just do this, or they're arrogant in some way, that's probably when you want to look for somebody else. If they can't answer your questions, of course, that is another worry. If they don't know, they're not on the cutting edge, they literally don't know, then you're likely going to at least look for another opinion, right? But you have to know within yourself and within whoever you're caring for. And ultimately, the absolute thing that you need to know is the one you're caring for makes the final decision. If they're not sure, if they don't want to do something, then that is the best indicator to see if there is something else, right? See if you really haven't got the full picture yet. Of course, some of these things, depending on your situation, could be time sensitive, right? And you may have to go through this process more quickly. But again, your allies, the people that can help you along this, medical professionals, different research online, are absolutely necessary. I can't stress that enough, which means looking for more, considering you have the time, is almost always a good choice. Because again, think of the goal. It is to be supportive. It is to make sure that you're doing things with certainty so you don't regret them later. So by seeking that other option, you are actively helping that goal by getting more clarity. So this is the last part of actually building like your alliance, your team of allies, your medical team. The next part is how to actually leverage them most effectively. How do you use them to be most supportive of the healing of whoever you're caring for? How to work with your medical team to support healing best. Number one rule. Don't forget this. Even if you forget everything that I'm about to say in the entire section, don't forget this. Don't argue, collaborate. They are there to help. Think about it. They're a doctor, right? They're literally there to help you heal. Whether you believe in the thing that they're healing or not, whether you believe like, oh yeah, they're only treating symptoms, or whether you believe that they're actually there to help, they still, under the Hippocratic Oath, if they're actually a real good doctor, they're there to help, right? And of course, if you've done the good process of finding the right one for you, then this rule is going to be even more important. So a lot of times when you're in a situation where like, oh yeah, like I really don't think chemo is the answer, but they really think chemo is the answer, just take that in, right? They don't know what's going on in the other like 23 hours that you're at home. They only know what is like logically, medically, probably the best option for you. You take in their information. Arguing with them isn't really going to help, right? If you just argue like, oh no, I don't think that's right, it doesn't clarify the picture anymore. Instead, just take that, whatever they're recommending. You start to ask more questions to answer any of your concerns. Once you have all your concerns settled, all your questions answered, you write these down, and then you can go think about it later on or look for anything else. And going back to the actual process, your role, right? What is that question that you need to ask a lot of times to fill in the gaps? What else? If they're truly there to help you, they're going to give you what else they're thinking. Because a lot of times there's like really little things, like maybe a clinical trial or like a different type of thing that's a bit newer that they have a little bit less experience in, but they can still tell you about, right? And it might be something that you're interested in. But for me to get a little bit more specific, okay, how do you discuss different treatments or different pharmaceuticals? So the treatments, I think you have a good idea. You should be pretty clear cut. You just want to see like the pros and cons and if you have all the options. For the pharmaceuticals, it starts to change slightly just because there's typically a lot of different options for pharmaceuticals. Like there's a lot of different options that could potentially lower pain, for example. There's a lot of options that can lower inflammation. There's a lot of options that can lower nausea, and there's tons of side effects. But the key here is if something is not working for you right now, they recommended it, you tried it, it's not working, always ask that medical professional like, oh, can we try something else? Because in the beginning, it's actually still not that helpful to just understand all the different ones, right? Because they kind of all work on the same thing. Like, still ask, right? But think about who has the knowledge here. The oncologists for those pharmaceuticals know the best thing. They've worked with hundreds of different patients. They know what typically works. You try it. If it doesn't work, try something else based on whatever they recommend. And on top of that, right? For example, my dad, he had nausea during chemo. They gave him things for nausea and he took them, right? But for him, he realized, oh, it doesn't work at all. So he stopped taking them, but what he tried, he realized that, oh, he just drinks a little soup in like ginger soup. He feels a little bit better. And think about it yourself. Like the medical team, they're fine with whatever he's eating for his specific situation. They didn't restrict his diet at all. So just drinking that ginger soup, well, mine as well, right? Instead of taking a whole bunch of pills that have side effects. But again, your oncologist is your primary point of contact because remember, you're battling cancer here, right? They are the cancer specialists. Work with them. Essentially, for both the pharmaceuticals and the treatment options, you're going to ask those questions that create clarity in the other module that I mentioned. So I'll just mention them briefly again right here. It was like, okay, who should I ask or where should I look for more information? Typically, if you're already talking to your oncologist, then it's like, okay, what is this thing? What is this treatment option? What is this pharmaceutical? What is the effect that it should actually have? What are the pros and cons for it? What else is there? If for whatever reason you didn't really like those pros and cons, or just what else is there just so you know later on that you could potentially pivot to, or maybe you can ask the oncologist like, oh, what are some at-home things or off-the-shelf things that you could potentially take? Like, of course, there's prescription things for certain things, but there's like off-the-shelf, like you could just get Tylenol, right? And you ask the oncologist that as well, if there's any of those. Then you can, of course, also ask them, how do these things compare? And once they give you that answer, what I mean by don't argue, collaborate is they gave you the answer already. You don't have to like, oh, I don't think that's right? It's just not helpful. They gave you the answer already. They're not going to change their answer just because you don't think they're right or you don't think that's right for them. Just take the information as it is. They are there to help. They're trying to help. Let them help. The faster you can do that, the more ground that you can cover, the more information that you can pull out of them, which of course is conducive of creating that supportive healing for whoever you're caring for. And next, we're going to go into AI because, of course, these oncologists, these doctors that you're working for, any of these medical professionals, they're people, right? Sometimes they make mistakes. Sometimes things slip their mind. What AI is going to help you do is once you get your answers, or even before you get your answers, pull out all those different ideas so that you can effectively bring it up. Even catch some things that maybe they missed and then you ask. AI deep dive for research. Being able to pull the information from thousands and thousands of articles that you could never do personally, distill down the distinct, unique points from the AI, not letting it actually diagnose, recommend, prescribe, or anything like that. Even options that maybe your oncologist either forgot about or missed or didn't consider. And then you can ask. Let's say you have some sort of question. The oncologist said, okay, he talked about some sort of specific type of radiation treatment or chemotherapy treatment. Well, you go to AI and you ask it like, for my person I'm caring for, specific cancer, what are the implications of this particular treatment versus this particular treatment? Can you summarize all the research? Give me the stats, put it in tables, tell me all about it in plain English. And then what will that do? It'll pull from hundreds of papers. Probably your oncologist has read them if he's good. And it'll give you just like the simple things so you can understand. So that is for research. The second use of AI is to find alternative resources or maybe like specialists that may be very specific and hard to find, and maybe your oncologist doesn't even know of it. So that, for example, I can give two different examples here. Like say you're looking for a naturopathic doctor to just add to your medical team to work with your oncologist so you can have a bit more of like the nutritional profile supplements type of thing. Well, AI is really good at like, oh, in my area, can you list all the good ones for this particular cancer or specialize in cancer in general? It'll list a whole bunch and you can just comb through it and then you actually look into it, right? Don't let the AI tell you anything. You actually look into every single person, and on top of that, you have to Google yourself, right? But the AI will maybe even get things that you miss here. And specifically, tell it to list things. Do not tell it to recommend anything. And then for alternatives, let's say for my dad, he had dry mouth. So we can ask AI, The oncologist, they already recommended some things like certain mouthwashes for his dry mouth. But if you go to AI and ask like, oh, can you list all the different alternatives that you could do for dry mouth? And it listed some really good at-home things that my dad did try, like certain just salt and water to help rinse his mouth. Actually, the radiologist mentioned this one too. So that was one thing that he tried that worked quite well for him, and adding a little baking soda to it. The other thing that he tried was actually like swishing some coconut oil around his mouth, because you think of it like, oh, sometimes you can use coconut oil as lotion, and maybe you can, like the actual edible coconut oil, try it in your mouth, right? And that actually didn't work for him, but it was an option. Heard from AI, oncologist was fine with it, everybody was fine with it. But point is, it will give you a lot of ideas. So this is the end of working with your allies. The next module is going to be all about health, but I'm not going to tell you about like specific, like, oh, do this to be healthy in this category, or like eat these things or sleep in this way. No, none of that. It's only going to be about the process that I use to research different health categories, so I could find, again, you being individual, find specifically what works for me and specifically what had worked for my dad specifically, okay? And of course, I am going to cover the things that I looked at, hopefully to give you some ideas, giving you a starting point, but then you use the process to decide what's right for you. If you're finding this video masterclass helpful right now, I actually do have one more thing for you, which is in the top link description, a free community that I created where I've broken this entire masterclass down into individual 5 to 10 minute videos, so you can take it at your own time and also save your progress, start where you left off. On top of that, given it is a community, you can interact with everyone else there that is also in that similar role of a caregiver, someone else diagnosed with cancer, and they really want to support. You can share ideas, brainstorm. Plus, any resources that I mentioned in this video will all be there to download for free. And inside that community will be all the updates and additions I make to this protocol to make it more helpful later on. So if you do think that will be helpful for you, of course, you can just click that top link in the description and join completely for free. So now we're getting to some really good stuff long-term, the process to figure out for yourself what is going to make you most healthy, and then also what is going to make whoever you're caring for most healthy, supporting their body to heal itself, and then their treatments to most work effectively and to also recover from the treatments. The decision-making process, not specifically what to do, because again, I also can't say this enough. Everybody's cancer is different. Everybody's body is different. You have to have the skill to find what is going to work for you. And then critical disclaimer, again, I'm not a doctor. I do not provide medical advice. And to be honest, even doctors that tell you, oh yeah, you just do this, it works for everybody, I would argue that is not quite right, because literally your DNA is different. If you want medical advice, you go to your medical team that you found that it's very good based on the process that I mentioned before. The goal here is to ask better questions, internal questions to yourself, to start to discover things that you may want to try and experiment in terms of lifestyle, like how you sleep, what you eat, how you digest things, the types of exercise that you do, and also same for whoever you're caring for. So every video is pretty much going to be same in this entire section. First, I'm going to start with the process. What are the 3 key questions that I ask to decide for myself in this particular category? Then I'm going to walk through what I looked at, the different categories I looked at, sort of just as an example for you. So 1, you could see how I actually use the process. And then number 2, you can actually maybe get a couple of ideas, see the things that it look like, so you don't have to just start from scratch like I did. And the first and next video is going to be on sleep, because this is probably the most important thing, not only for you, but probably every single animal on the entire planet, including, of course, who you're caring for. Quality sleep. It's literally the foundation of cellular repair. It is your body's main time to do all the repairs and do the different functions that it wasn't able to do while you are awake. Without it, you're going to be stressed. The medical treatments that you get, or whoever you're caring for gets, isn't going to work as well. They're not going to be able to recover it for it as well. And I don't think any doctor will argue with me that sleep is not important. And maybe one of the most important things. My process for actually researching what works best in terms of quality sleep for me and who I'm caring for is these 3 questions. It is, does it improve QQRT? Quality, quantity, regularity, and timing. And this framework is from a sleep doctor, or one of the top researchers on sleep probably in the world, as far as I know. He wrote a book called Why We Sleep, and this is his framework. And I'll get into it in a little bit once I get to the example. But second question is, can whatever particular thing that you're thinking about doing to promote sleep be implemented without friction or without like stressing the person you're caring for out or you out? And last, does it cause harm in any way or hinder any medical treatments? So now let me get into the example. For one, I started out researching more environmental levers. So what can we change in the house or in my dad's sleeping area, where he sleeps, the room he sleeps in, to be more conducive of quality sleep? What is the first thing that I looked into? It is light exposure, right? Very linked to sleep. If you get bright lights, very hard to sleep. Nice and dark, pretty easy to sleep, right? So I researched into like blue light blocking, morning sunlight, blackout curtains, like red glasses. And in this stuff, what do? We looked at all those things, of course. We turned on the digital blue light filter on all his devices. And I did this for myself as well. And you can set it so that it automatically turns on at a certain time. Sometimes they have a setting where it like automatically is like linked to the clock. So it goes down actually the same time when the sun goes down, that blue light filter turns on. And for my dad, what he ended up doing is pretty much we installed like warm lights. So overhead lights are warm. So they have it more of that red light, less of that blue light. And he found that helped him sleep. It really did. And we also added in after that dimmable lights. So we turned it down. So at night it's actually dark. So he starts to feel tired faster. And I myself, as sort of an experiment, first, I used the blue light blocking glasses to see how it worked for me. And personally, I felt it helped, but my dad didn't really want to do this. And of course, since he's the final decision maker, he didn't want to get different glasses with red lenses. So we didn't do that. But if we now walk through the process, right? Going through all those things like QQRT, does turning on those blue light blockers help quality sleep? Yes, it does. Because what does that do? It stops the blue light from disrupting your cortisol, therefore allows you to more effectively fall into sleep that is higher quality. Does it promote the quantity? Yes, it does. Because if you fall asleep faster, of course, you're going to sleep for a bit longer. Does it promote the regularity? Maybe not, but it'll probably allow you to more effectively fall asleep and then therefore fall asleep at a more consistent time. And then timing, does it promote timing? Actually, yes, it does, right? If you're more of a morning person versus a nighttime person, right? Like you're more of a night owl. If you had like blue lights, it could disrupt this cycle, this sort of circadian rhythm. But now if you implemented these sort of light exposure type things, you put the curtains to help your body anchor to the time that is most natural for it. And for my dad specifically, actually, we found that he likes and feels more energized waking up in the morning. So then it actually, all these things that we tried, it promotes those QQRT. And by the way, I think you know what quality is. It's just like getting deep sleep in REM sleep. Quantity is, of course, just the length of time. Regularity, in timing, these might be a bit more confusing. Regularity is like how close in time are you to going to sleep every day? Is it like within 15 minutes? Like you're always going to sleep anywhere between 9:45 and 10:15. Super regular, right? Versus if you're super unregular, then you're going to go to sleep. Sometimes you go to sleep at 9 o'clock. Sometimes you go to sleep at like 1 o'clock in the morning. You want to get that regularity as tight as possible. And then timing, it's just like, if you're a morning person, probably should go to sleep a bit earlier. If you're a night owl type of person, probably should go to sleep, where it's comfortable a bit later. But then also that means waking up a bit later, and hopefully that works with your schedule. And we go through the light exposure in the second part of the question, right? Is can we implement these things with low stress? Like my dad, he didn't do the red lens glasses, blue light blocking lenses, because he felt like, it's just a pain in the ass to have two different glasses. So we didn't do that because it kind of like, it was friction. It stresses him out. It's not going to help. And that stress is, of course, not conducive to healing. And last thing is will it do harm? Will it affect any of the treatments? Will it affect healing at all? And all these things, they didn't. And we cleared that with the medical team. Like, things later on, we tried like supplements. We made sure to clear it with them. Something like glasses, of course. I mean, you can get your own glasses, right? You don't have to tell everything to your medical team if it's something that simple. Like, you don't have to consult with them of what curtains you're installing in your house. But now, to give you a bit more of what I researched and explain the experience I went through with sleep a little bit more, there are some behavioral. So what you do within yourself, what whoever you're caring for does every single day to help promote that QQRT. So number one, one more thing in the environmental factor is temperature. So of course you can lower the temperature on the thermostat or increase the temperature on the thermostat. And the way you figure this out, right, is just always ask, like, how did you sleep a certain day? And you can know what was on the thermostat, or like, how were you falling asleep? Did you feel hot? Did you feel cold? And my dad specifically, he was always feeling cold, but the thermostat wasn't very helpful for whatever reason. Like, he didn't want to turn up that high. It didn't work for him. So instead, he left the thermostat the same, just added an extra blanket, and that worked for him. So temperature, typically, and this is just based on the research that I've seen, typically around like 60s is usually where people fall asleep best. But of course, play around with it, see what works for you. If the thermostat stuff doesn't work, well, then maybe just go and try like adding and mixing around the different blankets or mixing around the different clothes. And another thing that my dad tried in terms of temperature, actually this sort of gets into the behavioral stuff, but it is taking a warm shower, and then that like feeling warm after the shower actually helped him fall asleep. And then just like the science of it, and don't quote me on it because this is something that I heard from Andrew Huberman, a neuroscientist, in one of his podcasts, but essentially that cooling after you get out of the shower, a warm shower, is helping you like sort of activate your calmer nervous system, I believe he said, and allows you to fall into sleep. And also sort of matches like the natural drop in temperature that you would have if you lived out in nature and didn't have this thermostat. And then same thing, low friction, low stress, okay with the medical team. Now, getting back into the behavioral stuff, it is like being able to sleep consistently, things that you can do to sleep consistency. So the things that I looked into is, of course, the circadian rhythm and alarm clocks. Pretty much those two things are what's going to most affect the timing and regularity, getting that as best as possible. So the circadian rhythm is, I literally just ask, right? I sort of mentioned this already. I asked my dad, how do you feel? Do you feel tired at a certain time of day? Do you feel energized at a certain time of day? I asked him in the morning. Sometimes I ask him at night. Sometimes I ask him during the day. And through this, you can write it down, you cannot write it down, but I start to build a mental picture. I was like, oh, he's quite energized when he wakes up at this time, or he looks like crap, right? When he wakes up at this time and he says he feels like crap. So probably not either, of course. He didn't sleep well, or this is not a good time for him. And if he's like, oh, I'm always tired at like 2:00, well, that is an indicator of like a lower point in his circadian rhythm, right? You start to build that picture and you start to craft that sleep schedule around that. And the alarm clock usage. Well, my dad, right? Sometimes you need an alarm clock if he needs to go somewhere, but think about all the animals out there. All the animals that are not humans, they don't have alarm clocks. They just wake up naturally when their body is done repairing. So for my dad, he always just uses an alarm clock for whatever reason. But then I explained this to him and he's like, oh yeah, I have nowhere to go. Might as well just stop using the alarm clock. And that's easy for him, right? Just turn off the alarm clock. And he actually hated the alarm clock anyway. So it's even better. And obviously the medical team's fine with you not using an alarm. But I mean, ask them if you're not sure, right? But stop using that alarm. Body wakes up when it's ready to wake up, and he felt more energized from doing that. And it allows his circadian rhythm to start to fall into a natural pattern, which of course is conducive to that QQRT, the whole thing, quality, the quantity, the regularity, and the timing. And the other thing is there any wind down routines or like screen cutoffs, things that you actions you take to help anchor in when you're going to sleep, get your body kind of like sort of like Pavlov's dog. You ring the bell and he's ready to eat. You ring the bell and you're ready to sleep, or you turn off the screen and you're ready to eat, or you do this stretching routine and then you're ready to sleep. So anchoring actions are very much like, oh, you always do this type of stretch before you go to sleep, sort of like Pavlov's dog. It'll get you ready to go to sleep. My dad specifically, what he found was best is just always doing that warm shower. And that gets him into a certain rhythm, like, okay, I do the shower, I'm ready to go to sleep. Do the shower, brush my teeth, ready to sleep. And on top of that, he found, okay, if I eat my meals at this certain time, and then I have like this certain block to do whatever and digest, and then I have this certain time to do my shower and then finally go to sleep. Again, that Mealtime is also an anchor point for the sleep because it affects your circadian rhythm. And of course, this information applies to you too. And you have to find what works for you. Like I literally eat earlier than my dad just because it works better for me. So you go through that same process, QQRT, low friction. Does it affect any treatments? Good with the medical team. Try things out. Find what works for both you and who you're caring for. Then if we get into more of the quote unquote chemical levers, this is where you get a little bit more dangerous and you really have to pay attention to the third question of the process, which is to clear it with the medical team. Make sure it doesn't interact with any of the different treatments that you might be doing. So my dad, of course, he drinks coffee, he drinks tea. Those things have caffeine. Do you want to cut it off at a certain time? And of course, is it okay for your medical team to even have caffeine in the first place? Because you might have some other medical condition. For my dad, it was okay for him. So he kept doing that, but he made sure to cut it off at 2 o'clock. And that just worked for him to be able to fall asleep when he falls asleep. And on top of that, he wants to sleep better. So what things promoted sleep? Like we looked into different sleep supporting supplements, like magnesium is one of them for him. For him, he also tried reishi mushroom. He also tried just drinking chamomile, for example. And in there's like abgenin, and tea has L-theanine. And he also tried the L-theanine by itself. And through trying all this stuff, my dad, he realized nothing really feels like it does anything. But his magnesium is actually low, so he continued to just take the magnesium whether he felt like it did anything or not. And this is from his lab work. So then the oncologist was actually supportive of taking that magnesium, not for the sleep, but just in general. And of course, we didn't continue to take all of the other stuff, even though they had no negative effects, because it was just extra friction, extra stress that he didn't want to deal with. So stop all of those things. Same process for you, right? Those 3 questions. I can't say this enough. Don't just blindly do whatever it is that I mentioned here. That's just a starting point. You can start to research those things for your own. Some of them might work, some of them might not. So this is the process for discovering for yourself what would be the most supportive of your sleep. Next, we're going to talk about deep rest. So anytime you're not sleeping, how can you actually get into a state that is promoting recovery? Deep rest. Deep rest does 2 things. Not only does it help whoever you're caring for manage stress, but it could help them then fall into sleep. And actually, it can sort of help your body recover, digest, do its healing. Because if it's not in a state of fight or flight, this survival state, the sympathetic nervous system, so that sort of survival mode is on all the time. Of course, your body's not going to repair, right? You want to activate this parasympathetic nervous system, which is kind of letting your body, its organs do its thing, heal more. It redirects the limited energy that you and whoever you're caring for have to just recovering, actually resting, even during waking hours. So my process for researching non-sleep deep rest, or just you can call it deep rest in general, is this. Does it actively shift the nervous system into a parasympathetic state? So a state of rest. Does it require minimal physical exertion? Because literally, if it was physically exerting, it's obviously not restful, right? And is it immediately accessible for your or their current physical condition? So like if they literally can't do it, if it would be harmful in some way, of course, it's not something that works for you, not something that works for them. So what are the things that I researched here? First things I research here is more physiological things that have to do with your body, that you can do with your body and that they can do with their body, that will help promote this state. First thing is just like breathing, regular meditation. You maybe heard of like box breathing, or this physiological sigh. Let me just tell you what all of them are, and then I'll walk you through the process. So meditation, of course, or breathing exercise in general, it's just kind of like closing your eyes and focusing on your breath and only focusing on your breath and sort of letting your body relax. Typically, that parasympathetic shifting type of meditation is called box breathing. So you breathe in simply for about 4 seconds and then breathe out for about 8 seconds. And the physiological sigh, this is like a sharp breathe in followed by a second sharp breathe in. And according to Andrew Huberman, what this does is you have little sacs in your lungs. And that second breathe in, it expands those sacs with air and helps your body dump additional CO2. And what that does is actually activate the parasympathetic nervous system a bit more and induce a little bit of this relaxed state. Another thing you can do is like looking side to side horizontally. And if you think about nature, like looking side to side like that, scanning the horizon is sort of like the act of looking for danger. It helps you feel more calm. And I know these are little stupid things, but this is why we have the process. Like, okay, does it shift you into that state? Yes or no? If you don't feel that it works for you, like you did that type of thing, and it doesn't do anything, you don't feel any calmer, then of course don't do it. It doesn't work for you. If the breathing exercises don't work for you, then don't do it. Try something else. And does it require that minimal physical exertion? At least these things that I mentioned, they do. The only thing is like you have to be able to have like the lung capacity and things to do that. So of course, just make sure it's okay with your medical history and whatnot, and whoever you're caring for's medical history. And that sort of gets into the last question: is are they physically able to actually do this? Because if they're not, then of course that's not something that you want to do, and it's not right. Like my dad, what does he do? He just does regular meditation. That's what works for him. He doesn't like to do all these little hacks that I mentioned that are based on things that I heard from Andrew Huberman. But now moving on is actual non-sleep deep rest. Usually this is in the form of yoga nidra. And Andrew Huberman, where I got a lot of these things, actually has a video dedicated to doing yoga nidra, one of the more effective forms of non-sleep deep rest. Essentially what it is, you are closing your eyes and you're just relaxing. So this is something that one could do if you could not sleep for whatever reason, but still wanted to get some rest. And maybe this is something that you do like, oh yeah, you're in the hospital, you're getting some sort of cancer treatment, but you're tired, right? You could maybe do some non-sleep deep rest, and you can do your research into it, but you go through that process. Ask those 3 questions. And the next thing is paying attention to your own body, them paying attention to their own body, doing like maybe a body scan type of thing and trying to just relax the tension in their muscles. Because of course, if you're in a fight or flight, right, you're tensed up, whether you realize it or not. You're stressed out. Your muscles are going to tense somewhere, whether it's your abdomen or maybe your arms or your like neck or your back or maybe your jaw, right? If you just stop for a second, you realize where that tension is, you look inside your own body with your own feeling, your own self-perception, and you just relax those muscles. Many times it's somewhere in your face, but you relax it, and that sort of lets your body know like, okay, we're not in a fight or flight situation anymore, can calm down, can start to repair. And this is something that I had my dad try, because I would notice, right? He would be like, really like tight when he's going to the hospital and like grip his hands and maybe like gripping his arm. And I would say like, you notice what you're doing. I would point it out to him. Like my role as the external, like essentially strategist, I point those things out to him. And then he would actually, something that we found is what works for him is that just active relaxing. So of course, still go through that process and then find the thing that works for you and who you're caring for. But now those are some of the physiological, so of the body measures. Next is the cognitive things. What cognitive things can you do to induce this deep rest? And these are things that I looked into, and I would also call them focused based. So what I mean by that is allow your mind to think about or focus on the things that you want it to focus on, not have unconsciously battered with all kinds of things which stretch you out, of course, put you back into that state of fight or flight. And also, of course, same thing for the person you're caring for. First thing, meditation. Personally, my dad, right? He was already into like sort of martial arts and stuff like that way before he got diagnosed, for years and years and years. So he had a lot of different meditation tactics that work for him, and that's just what he used, okay? And there's other type of things like maybe visualization, maybe guided meditation apps that you could look into, audio tracks, right? Look into those things. And I don't have much more to add here simply because my dad just went and do meditation. I personally, that is what I do as well. So moving on to more environmental levers. What can you change around to you to induce this deep rest and stay out of that fight or flight? One is sensory reduction. What I mean by that is, okay, a lot of stuff happening around you, right? Could you sit in a completely silent place if possible, or like move yourself to a more silent place, move whoever you're caring for to a more silent place? Of course, that is calmer. Not all these things going on. Like in the hospital, right? Maybe you can't move. So could you just put on noise canceling headphones? Could you bring like a little eye mask so whoever could take a nap? So what worked for my dad, like none of those things he actually did because he didn't like it, right? And he doesn't like noise canceling headphones. But what he found worked for him, he just got earplugs, put them in. And he eventually got like a earplug sort of custom molded headphones that blocks out all the sound passively, which works very well for him. And he uses that so he can kind of sit in the hospital in peace when he's getting his treatments and whatnot. And if he wants to take a nap, he just closes his eyes, or maybe he will bring a hat which he can just kind of like pull over his eyes, like one of those beanie type hats. And then the other thing we look into is nature exposure. So I don't know about you, but at least for me, and then also for my dad, because we're sort of similar, I guess. We've lived together for a very long time. We go into nature and it feels very relaxing. Like you see the greenery, you breathe in the fresh air. It's like silent. You hear the birds. Very relaxing for my dad. So sometimes he goes out and walks. Considering you go through the process, right? Does it shift you into that state? Does that nature actually work for you, right? And does the place that you're going in nature actually work for you? Like versus the desert versus the forest. Like I don't really like the desert. It's very drying. I don't like it. Does it require minimal physical exertion? If it's like a light hike, yeah. If it was super strenuous, obviously that's not very deep rest, right? So my dad doesn't do that. He goes on lighter ones when he is trying to rest. Of course, if he was trying to exercise, he would go other places, but he's trying to rest here. So he would go to more restful places. And is it okay for his physical condition? In the beginning, actually, yes. When he was like doing chemo, he was okay. He was healthy enough that oncology was fine with it. He was going on regular hikes. But later on, he actually had some cancer in his hip pop up that got bad. He was doing radiation in his hip. It's resolved at this point, undetectable. But during that time, he stayed away from those more strenuous hikes because this may have been an issue in his physical condition. So, of course, you have to ask these questions. That's why I have this process. And the last thing is what I will call sensory additions. So instead of like not reducing the things that are negative for this relaxation, but actually adding in things that could help relaxation. So there are things like I looked into binaural beats, I looked into podcasts, I looked into TV, I looked into warm showers, I looked into like hot tubs and like having a warm bath, I looked into different music. And what worked for my dad, like he doesn't do the binaural beats, he doesn't listen to like podcasts because he doesn't find those two things relaxing. But for him, I mean, I don't think it's relaxing, but he thinks leaving the TV on when he's taking a nap is relaxing. So, okay, fine. He can do that. He also, remember I mentioned the warm shower. He finds that that's very relaxing. And on top of that, when we went together, we went to Arizona. I brought him there. He would always go into the hot tub because he finds it extremely relaxing and actually not only relaxing to his mind, but literally to his body. Like some of them, he felt like the pain was easing from that heat and the extra circulation, and it just felt like nice, maybe sweating a little bit. So now we took that thing and we actually brought it home. Like we didn't get our own hot tub, not quite yet, but he would just, in his house, he would have like basically a hot bath, and that's what works for him. And on top of that, particularly when he's stressed out, he likes to use music. He likes to turn on the music and just kind of listen to it, helps him calm down, I suppose. It doesn't work for me, but that's what works for him. That's, again, why you have to go through the process, find the actual thing that works. And another thing, just a side note on the music, is I noticed when my dad is in pain, like specifically in pain, and I'll talk about this more later in another module, but he would have the volume ever so slightly higher on the music. And I would notice that, and I was like, oh, I look at him and I was like, okay, what's wrong? And I ask him, and then we start to address it versus just letting him sit there and blast music a little bit louder to try to cover it up, right? But anyways, getting back to it, go through those three questions, like shift into deep state, don't have to do much, doesn't hurt anything, good for your physical condition, convenient for the location, all those things. That is the end of deep rest. Next is nutrition. Of course, another one of the essential parts if you want to support healing as much as possible in yourself, and then to, of course, help the person that you're caring for, and also, of course, directly help them. The process, nutrition, food. This is going to provide the critical building blocks. Literally, it is what you are made of, the food that you've eaten in the past, to rebuild healthy cells and also recover from those treatments that sometimes are a bit harmful, have some side effects for whoever you're caring for. My process for reviewing any type of supportive diets or what food that me actually and my dad is this. 1, can you or they actually stick to it? Does it cause no harm? Does it actually support the health goals? Like in terms of recovery or maybe building muscle or maintaining a certain amount of weight. First thing that I researched was the actual dietary styles. Within like the first days, and honestly, this is something that I researched for myself many years prior to even my dad ever being diagnosed, is what? You have carnivore, you have omnivore, you have herbivore. And I know many people don't say herbivore, but let's say like vegetarian or vegan. These are very literally encompass all the diets that you could possibly have. Like you can have any like fad diets you can think of, but anyways, it all comes down to carnivore, omnivore, and herbivore. I've researched all of these. Well, if my dad were to do a carnivore diet, what would that look like? Could he stick to it? The question for my dad was no, because he found for his body to work and have the bowel movements, and I know you don't want to talk about poop, but to have his bowel movements, he needed to eat some vegetables, and that's what's best for him. So we excluded the carnivore diet. And you have to find though, actually, like don't just blindly trust anybody. It's like, oh yeah, just do this diet. It's going to be good for cancer. Find if it works really by going through these questions. Then you also ask, could cause no harm? Actually, the carnivore diet would cause harm for my dad because he would get constipated. And that's obviously not very helpful. And does it support the health goals? It actually might. In my dad's case, he wanted to reduce sugar, reduce carbs. So the carnivore diet might help. But actually, by totally excluding the vegetables, of course, he said it was no to those other 2 questions. So that's why it was a no. But then we move on to like omnivore. Well, what does that provide? Of course, omnivore is an extremely wide range. Like you could be doing keto, you could potentially doing paleo, you could doing like Mediterranean, you could be eating like I don't know what else, right? There's a whole bunch of diets you could do in there, and you have to decide specifically what you want to eat yourself. But for my dad, omnivore was right, because what did that allow him to do? Could he stick to it? Yes, because he could still eat his lettuce, he could still eat his meat that he wants and that he feels that is healthy for him, and he feels inside that it is promoting his body to recover. And also, it is doing no harm, at least in the things that he ended up picking to eat in this omnivore diet. And then the herbivore, of course, he can't eat the meat anymore. But in order to, at least for my dad, to maintain his muscle mass and to get the amount of protein they need, and also to stay in keto, he felt that he needed that meat in his diet. He didn't think he could stick to that herbivore diet. So of course, it is a no. Already right from the bat, answer that question, it is a no. And then next is researching the actual metabolic states. So this is like an add-on, right? Because you could do keto or you could not do keto in any of these different dietary styles, whether it's carnivore, omnivore, or herbivore. So my dad, did he want to do keto or not? For no on keto, could he stick to it? Yeah, I mean, he wasn't on keto diet before. Does it cause no harm? Well, from doing the research myself and validating it from other doctors, and also himself testing it. Okay, he literally tested it in the bad way, and I'll explain in a second. Sugar in his diet for his particular cancer. His cancer likes to eat sugar. So by eating sugar, that cancer grew faster. And this is, again, validated by the medical professionals in his case that knew him. And he himself, before he was diagnosed, literally right before he's diagnosed, he decided to go on a trip because he's like, oh yeah, I got to go on this last trip. I might not survive, blah, 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 blah. And he ate like every single dessert in a buffet that he could get. He didn't even bother to eat food, just dessert. And you know what happened? His cancer got extremely painful. It grew exponentially. And that's when he realized, okay, I should just shift to a keto diet. And then you go and answer the questions. Can he stick to it? Yes, he can. He doesn't mind eating meat. He doesn't mind cutting sugar. Does it do no harm? Yes, because again, cutting out that sugar that he felt for him was harmful. And then also based on my research and the medical professionals. And then also, does it support the health goals? Yes, it supports the health goal of not feeding the cancer, right? Not trying to do things that worsen the cancer. Because think about it. Like I mentioned before, the cancer is like a rebel within their body. Like the rebels that are revolting, causing this civil war. If you literally feed them, you feed the enemy, it's going to get worse, right? So Next thing is researching timing of food. So this sort of gets into basically fasting or no fasting, or when are you eating your meals. For my dad, can he stick to it? Yeah, he's fine with eating 3 meals a day, right? Does it cause no harm? Yeah, I mean, everybody eats 3 meals a day. Does it support his health goals? According to my research, according to many researchers online, like there's cardiologists, there's cancer researchers like Dr. William Lee, for example, and Dr. Thomas Siegfried, I believe you call his name, they mentioned that fasting could be helpful. So my dad doing that research and realizing that fasting does no harm for him, and then our medical team, they said, yeah, do whatever you want in terms of fasting. He tried fasting and he liked it. He feels better. And honestly, within his scans, as far as he knows, he believes that it shows, and the doctors are very happy with his results. Of course, undetectable now, which is unusual, but my dad feels that fasting was one of the best things that he did in terms of that. So he continues to do it in timing. So that's something that you have to consider. And by going through those 3 questions again, then the last thing is food quality. What I mean by this, like you could of course get food from the grocery store. You could get food from the grocery store and have it be organic. You could also have food directly from a farm, a regenerative farm that uses no like chemicals, antibiotics, pesticides. And you have to find what works for you, because you consider like, can you stick to it? Can you continuously go to this farm, or is it more convenient to go to the grocery store? And for certain things, like actually getting the meat, right? We could get it from the grocery store, just get like some organic meat. And my dad felt that made him feel better and better for his health. But we decided, and he just wanted to actually just go to a regenerative farm and get meat from them instead, because not only does he feel the meat tastes better, and of course that is promoting his health goals, and obviously the oncologist is not going to care if you eat organic or not, but it wasn't a logistical problem. It wasn't a pain in the ass to go to that farm and pick up that meat. So yes, he could stick to it. Yes, it did no harm. Yes, it was supportive of goals. But for you, like you have to consider, okay, what is your financial situation? Are there actually farms near you that you can conveniently go to? Or maybe you can get it online and have it shipped to you. You decide these things and you pick, okay, maybe I'll get it from the grocery store just straight up, or maybe I'll do organic or not organic. You don't feel like it helps you. Of course, decide all that through that process again. I can't say it enough. So this is the last part of nutrition. And remember, you can't drop nutrition. It is absolutely essential part. But next we have hydration, which is again, as I mentioned, a essential part. Optimal hydration, literally getting those fluids in your body, is what allows it to not only flush toxins, but most effectively transport nutrients within the body. So my process for researching this is these 3 questions. Does it support cellular hydration and minerals? Minerals is a very important part. Why? Because your body is not able to use pure water. It has to have like salt to move around different liquids, or potassium or magnesium or calcium. It has to have these minerals to move around the liquid and most effectively use the liquid. Otherwise, the liquid will just sit in the body, and that's actually sort of toxic. So does it support the body from flushing toxins as well? Is something you're going to evaluate with anything you do with hydration. And then third is, does it avoid adding unnecessary load to the things, the organs in your body that actually do a lot of the work with the fluids? So the liver, which filters the blood and other things, and also the kidneys, which of course filters a lot of the fluids that go through and then eventually comes out of urine. Now, the first thing that I researched is water quality. That comes from 2 places. It comes from 1, where's the actual source? And 2, how are you treating it in your own home? So the source, of course, you could get like spring water, you could get well water, you could get city tap water, you could get bottled water, and even whatever source you're getting from, like spring water, for example, there's actually a website that you can go to, like Springs Near Me. You could probably Google it and find the website, and you can actually go and find a natural spring near you and get water. But is that conducive of hydration? I mean, yes, it is. Does it support the body? Yes, it does. But for us, it was no, because it could add some extra load in the form of maybe there's some minerals in that spring water, because it's not really tested, it's from nature, that my dad maybe wouldn't want to take the risk on going towards. Then if we look at like well water, he doesn't actually have well water, it just comes from the city tap. So we don't have to worry about well water, but you evaluate yours with those 3 questions. And then we have the city tap water. The city tap water, our city water is actually quite clean, but not clean enough. So that's why we look into filtration. I'll talk about that in a second. But then bottled water. He avoids bottled water because he didn't, we going through the questions. My dad, he decided, okay, bottled water in plastic, not probably conducive of health, adds some unnecessary load to the kidneys and the liver. So he excluded that. And you go through this process, but you'll probably logically find that you end up going towards thinking about filters, trying to research filters. So what do you have? You have reverse osmosis, you have just carbon filters, you have distillation. Like this has to do with the steam and making the steam and like actually distilling the water. Well, reverse osmosis and distillation. If we ask, does this support cellular hydration and minerals? Well, if you're taking reverse osmosis, and by fact, I'll tell you this now, just based on what I found. Of course, you can do some more research yourself, and you should. And of course, consult the medical professionals if you're ever concerned about it. Reverse osmosis, it strips all the minerals out, and also distillation. So my dad, he felt, okay, not good for him, because actually in his labs, and according to the oncologist, he's like, okay, he's low on a lot of minerals. So having that reverse osmosis, and literally we talked to oncologists about this, is reverse osmosis water would make that worse. So he stopped doing that. And instead, we just go and have a regular water filter that we found was good, leaving some minerals in there. Next thing is actually researching the mineralization. I mentioned my dad gets the blood test. He knows what the minerals are. The oncologists know what the minerals are. So they may recommend my dad get some electrolytes. Like he actually buys some electrolytes. So when you research this, there's probably a whole bunch of different brands. Not only is there a lot of brands, there's specific minerals that you probably want to target. Again, you ask those 3 questions to see if it is right for you. And what you're going to land at is probably going into the labs, the blood work that you get, and then you asking the oncologist, and then now finding a good source that specifically gets those minerals and doesn't have any crap additives, right? Because when I go through this research process, you land at number 3, which is, okay, does it add load to the kidneys or liver? If it has some sort of additives, like maybe some sweeteners, that's just unnecessary. You could probably just get the pure mineral itself. And if you want to talk about like dosing and all that stuff, I will cover supplements later, but just it's very simple. Always just ask the oncologist. They literally have the blood work, right? It's their job to help you with these things. And going further into electrolytes, well, my dad, he started just drinking LMNT, just basic. I guess they have the unflavored, but they have some flavored ones that are fairly natural. They have some stevia. He likes those. It works for him. So he went with that. It has salt, potassium, and magnesium. And oncologists approved that, okay, that's a really great brand. And actually, he did talk to a nutritionist about this, and she was like, okay, that's good too. So there's that. And also, he's still low in his salt, like his regular sodium, even though he's taking the electrolytes. So other things we consider is the actual salt types. And this is probably something that you're going to face off too. Like, oh, do you want Himalayan salt? Do you want sea salt? Do you want Celtic salt? Do you want like whatever other salt? And for my dad, what we landed on was Himalayan salt, because we found that, okay, we looked at sea salt and the sea salt might have some microplastics, hard to source here. So avoid the sea salt. The Celtic salt are kind of expensive, like absurdly expensive. Maybe it has a tiny tinge of magnesium in it, but forget that. Can get magnesium somewhere else. So just take Himalayan salt. We got a good source for it. Gonna go with that. And next thing is researching additives to anything that you're drinking for hydration. So typically, if you're drinking like coffee, it's gonna have caffeine, or you're gonna add cream to it. Those are both like sort of additives. Maybe the caffeine's not additive, but the cream is an additive. Any sweeteners you add to it is an additive. Anything that you add to it is an additive. And typically what you're going to add, right? Let me just talk about the things that I considered. I considered sweeteners. I considered dairy, right? So the caffeine was fine, cleared by the medical professionals, fine with all of the different questions. And at least my dad was fine with it in terms of like, it does hydrate him. Does it help him flush out? Yes, because like actually, if he drinks a morning coffee, it helps him go to the bathroom. And then number 3 is, does it put extra load on the kidneys and liver? Maybe, may not, but the oncologists, everybody, they said, fine, drink your coffee, drink your tea. But then we looked at dairy. My dad's lactose intolerant. Yes, it puts a lot of stress on his system. So right away, we got rid of that. He actually has a very slight bit of heavy cream, because this doesn't have the sweeteners, and that works for him and doesn't upset his stomach or anything like that, or put any extra load as far as he can tell. So he's okay with heavy cream, but he used to have sugary creamer. And that sugar is not an additive that he wanted, so he cut it out. And then we talking about the dairy in general. He used to sometimes like to drink milk, but he cut that out because why? Like again, he was lactose intolerant. He just drank it because he liked his taste, but it's not conducive of the health again. So that's why he cut it out. So this is the research protocol for hydration. Next, we're going to talk about digestion, because of course you can hydrate, you can get nutrients all you want. If you don't effectively process it within the body, it's not going to do anything. Digestion, the gut. Not only does the gut dictate your immune system because of all the microbes in there, you literally have 10 times more microbes in your gut than you do in your entire body made of cells. It also determines your body's ability to absorb anything that it takes in, not only the hydration and the minerals that you're getting, but also anything that you're eating, the nutrition that you're actually getting from the food. And this is what's going to dictate how well that whoever you're caring for's body can heal and endure any treatments. So my process for researching, does it, one, promote a healthy microbiome? And this has to do with the immune system. Does it soothe, or at least not mess up, the repair of the gut lining? Does it reduce mechanical and chemical digestion workload? Does the pee and the poo, basically the byproducts of the digestion, indicate any change? And by looking at the pee and the poo, I literally mean, like, what is the color of it? What is the texture of it? What is the smell of it? You don't have to look at these things yourself, and I'll get into more about how to actually perceive these things later and how you might want to react to them. But my dad looks at those things themselves, and I just kind of ask him, like, oh, did it smell different? Like, how did it change? Because depending on what you eat, right, and how well you digest it, like, you could have diarrhea, and that obviously is an indicator of something not so great, and maybe something to prompt you to, like, call your oncologist up right away or call whatever doctor up right away. But anyways, the first thing that you're probably going to start to research, the microbiome, probiotics, prebiotics, postbiotics, or just like maybe some fermented foods in general. For my dad, he never had fermented foods before, but we found, okay, his calcium was a bit low. So we talked to the oncologist, they mentioned a few things, maybe like take some calcium or whatnot, but they also mentioned something which is vitamin B and vitamin K2. And fermented foods and certain probiotics actually create this vitamin K2. So my dad decided something super easy. Oh, I'll just eat some fermented foods, get a little of this vitamin K2, help absorb the calcium that he needs a little bit better because it's a little bit low. So for you, is it you're doing prebiotics to feed any particular microbes that of some sort of issue that you're trying to solve or something that you're trying to support, like my dad and his calcium? Is there a probiotic that you can actually take? Maybe there's a probiotic you can take that will actually help the digestion of a certain thing, which will promote something. Or are you just straight up eating some sort of fermented food that, of course, either has the byproducts, the postbiotics broken down already that will promote something similar like the vitamin K2 that the oncologist also agrees with again. So if I go through all these questions similarly, is like, does it support that healthy microbiome? Yes, it does. And not, what does that do? It helps with the immune system, the immunotherapy that my dad is on. And of course, you can decide this, work with your oncologist to see if this would actually be supportive, but it was in my dad's case. And then does it soothe the gut? Actually, for my dad, like his gut would get messed up, but actually that kind of like the sliminess of the fermented foods, he felt it helped his digestion. And then does it reduce the mechanical workload? Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of pre-digested fermented foods, right? So he felt it digested very well. And it's actually easier to chew for him because at a time when he was doing radiation, his jaw didn't work so well because he got head radiation, right? He had head cancer. So on top of that, how does it change his pee and his poo? I don't think his pee changed in this case, but his poo, well, sometimes it changed colors and that could indicate something. Sometimes, like if, for example, he ate beets, very red, has that red dye, his poop is red, so in that case, probably not something to be concerned about. But if you didn't do that, you did something else and it's red, okay, well, that might be blood. You might want to go talk to the oncologist and you probably want to stop doing that right now, And next in these biological levers and very related to the microbiome is the actual like stomach acid or enzymes or bile that comes out of your liver. So the bile, based on my research, and you probably get into this, but the bile helps digesting of mostly the fats. I think maybe it helps a little bit with the proteins, and digesting other things later on when it gets into the small intestine. And of course, you have the stomach acid, which actually sterilizes the food and helps, of course, I mean, is digested. I'm not going to get into the science. It doesn't matter as much here. But for my dad, he had acid reflux, for example. And usually, or sometimes, and according to the oncologist that we work with, they mention things like taking antacids, or when I did some research online, maybe it's like he's not digesting the fats correctly if he eats a really fatty meal, or if he eats like certain carbohydrates, he eats a little bit too much or too much vegetables, it ferments too much and then starts to kick up gas. So he did try what the oncologists recommend, which is he took an antacid for a little while. And of course, this is all specific to your situation, what's actually going on. But this is what happened for my dad. And then also my dad, he realized like, okay, these antacids, they kind of suck, you know, they kind of work to keep it down, but then he doesn't really want to do that. So he thought like, well, it's giving me a lot of gas, and I saw it was giving me a lot of gas. So I looked, okay, what is he eating? Well, every single time he has gas, he eats like this super fatty meat. So 2 ways to do that. Of course, don't eat that super fatty meat sometimes. Or my dad can go and see like, what can I eat to promote this bile to help digest this fat? And actually for him, he likes to eat cocoa nibs. So he just takes some cocoa nibs, eat them, like these are unsweetened and things like that. And that bitterness would help his bile and his liver wake up a little bit. And actually he would have a little bit easier digestion if he ate something fatty. So something simple like that. And I won't go through the 4 questions again, but it does promote it. So that's what, in my research of these biological levers, he decided to just have that bitter thing, or that sour thing, or that salty thing. And next thing I want to get into is researching mechanical levers, physical processing. When my dad had that gas problem and the acid reflux problem, if he had any bloating or diarrhea, we looked into like, how's he chewing the food? What kind of physical activity is he doing during or after or before eating? Is the cooking method something to consider as well? I would say so. These are all mechanical, right? We found he would be really bloated if he kind of just scoffed down the meal and didn't really chew it. So something very simple that he started doing is just chewing more. And I found this within myself too. I realized that I just chew a little bit more, and like if I eat broccoli, well, I have less gas. So something to consider, the actual chewing. The walking, my dad found if he just walks after a meal, again, a little bit less bloated. And then cooking is like super fried, like, pan-seared steak versus, a little bit, not so much fried. How does it affect his digestion? You go through those questions, and actually, like that super pan fried, does it promote the gut lining? No, it's actually a bit oxidative based on the research that I've done. So could damage the gut lining a little bit, cause a little bit of inflammation. So we stopped doing that and moved towards more like gentle cooking methods. Like sometimes with just like a quick like stir fry, like not like char or anything, or maybe we'll just steam it, or maybe we'll just boil it, like braise it. And that's what worked for my dad. The next mechanical thing is the timing and the spacing. So I know I talked about it a little bit in like fasting and things like that, but what I mean by timing in the intrameal sense is like, do you eat your vegetables before your meat? Or do you eat your fruits, like what little fruits you may have at the end of the meal or before the meal? What I found is, in going through working with my dad, trying to figure out this timing, is that if he eats his salad first, he likes to eat a little lettuce almost every single day. If he eats that first, he gets less gas and less bloating, digestive issues than when he eats it after he eats his meat. So that is what we landed on. And of course, you answer the questions. It is reflected in all those questions. You find the scenario that is a yes, yes, yes. And then spacing is like, okay, are you going to eat the salad? And then right after you finish the salad, you're going to eat the meat. And then right after the meat, you're going to eat your fruit. My dad found when he actually just waited a bit in between and maybe like let it move through his stomach a little bit before he eat the next thing, better digestion. And then that, of course, eventually reflected in what comes out the other end. And in general, just how he's feeling, and based on the research of the gut lining and the microbiome and all that. Next thing, and I know this is getting very long, getting very complicated, but we have the neurological levers for digestion. So that is the gut-brain axis. And this is actually something that I found more affected me than my own dad, but it's like stress. Stress directly, right, dictates whether you are in the sympathetic, so fight or flight state, survival mode, or parasympathetic, which is their rest and digest. And I guess I'm the type of person who's sort of like very, in a sense, analytical. I work all the time. I basically work 7 days a week. So when I eat a meal, I'm still working. Like typically, I would sometimes I'll pull up my phone and I would be like researching something, or even if it's not work, I would be researching something from my dad, right? So this made it so I was stuck in that basically work mode, that survival mode all the time. And well, if you're in that mode, you're not digesting. I found if I literally, I tried it multiple days with working, without thinking, you're staying calm and eating the meal versus not. And every single time that I just focused on eating the meal and I did nothing else, and did my best to stay in that rest and digest, I actually had good digestion. And I carried this over to my dad. A lot of times he would watch news, like oh, this war is going on, this protest is going on, like this person got a car crash, or there's a natural disaster over here. He would watch news during his meals all the time. But then I asked him like, oh, why are you watching that? And he was like, oh, I don't know. So I asked if he was okay with maybe just not watching the news, watch something, more entertaining, more calm that he actually enjoys. And then he switched to that and he was like, oh, wait, I actually realized that, the food goes down easier. His exact words, maybe almost exactly. So pay attention to just those little things of your state of mind will also affect the end state of those 4 questions that you want to start asking, right? So this is the end of the digestion, the end of the internal things that you can do to promote the actual healing of yourself and also the one that you're caring for, considering, of course, it is approved by your medical team. Next, we're going to get into external things. What is that? So like supplements, like exercise, any movement or mobility that you might be doing. Because that, of course, not only do you have to do internal things, but external things, environmental factors, those protocols, and how to research that is also very much part of the picture. If you're finding this video masterclass helpful right now, I actually do have one more thing for you, which is in the top link description, a free community that I created where I've broken this entire masterclass down into individual 5 to 10 minute videos so you can take it at your own time and also save your progress, start where you left off. On top of that, given it is a community, you can interact with everyone else there that is also in that similar role of a caregiver, someone else diagnosed with cancer, and they really want to support. You can share ideas, brainstorm. Plus, any resources that I mentioned in this video will all be there to download for free. And inside that community will be all the updates and additions I make to this protocol to make it more helpful later on. So if you do think that will be helpful for you, of course, you can just click that top link in the description and join completely for free. Targeted supplementation. Of course, all things that are approved by your medical team can fill in nutrient gaps created by either the cancer itself or the treatments that you're taking, which of course are sometimes very damaging to the person that you're caring for. So of course, by filling these gaps, you can promote the healing of the treatment, allow it to work better, and just their body to heal as best as you can help support. So my research process for researching supplementation, both safely and effectively. Number one is, does the lab test? So my dad gets a whole lab test done on his blood every single time he gets treatments, every time he goes in there, and he gets like immune numbers, he gets mineral numbers, vitamins, all kinds of things. Do the supplement that you are considering help any of those, support any of those? Number two is, what does the clinical research say? So outside of whatever medical team you're working with, oncologists that you ask, you also, of course, you don't need to blindly trust them, and you should not blindly trust them. Also check yourself. So you look at like PubMed, you look at WebMD, you look at oncology databases. What does that say? Do you find from your research that it is also safe on top of the medical team? And I will have all these places that I look myself, which you can go and check too. The last one is, are there any contradictions to anything that they're taking right now, any of the treatments they're doing right now, or medical conditions? Of course, that is the one where you absolutely have to check with the medical team for, because they're the only ones that really know your history and know you specifically, and also know about all the different treatments very specifically. Now, getting into an example and what are all the different things that I actually did research in terms of supplementation. So first thing you have is fundamental levers. These are things that supplement just nutritional deficiencies. So I sort of mentioned these things in hydration and nutrition, but it's like the minerals, the vitamins, the lipids. So like omega-3 versus omega-6 versus omega-9. To give you an example of how I use this research process, let's just take omegas or lipids in general for. So my dad's on his labs. So going off the first question, his neutrophil to lymphocyte count, like the ratio was really high. And according to the oncologist, what that means, so by the way, this is just white blood cells to like more specialized immune cells. What that means is inflammation is super high in the body, which in my dad's case, it made sense because he had certain treatments going on that would make that inflammation go up and make this number go up. So now I did ask, like, okay, well, if the inflammation is high, would it be okay for my dad to take, from what I heard, my own research, these omega-3 supplements, which help influence that lowering of those really high inflammation? Of course, it's not direct, right? This is just something, a supplement. It is to support. So, of course, the oncologist was like, yeah, fine, you can give it a try. Like, they didn't really have too much of an opinion about it, but they said it wasn't dangerous. So we would try it with my dad. And well, the thing is, he hates those big ass pills. So we stopped doing that and actually just started eating a little bit fish in his diet. So eating some salmon. And of course, this is the process that you go through. And I went through like PubMed and examine.com, WebMD, a few of those things to make sure it was clear on my end. Especially what I think is examine.com is very helpful to just see that the more of the actual supplementation angle, what it might do. Andrew Huberman, he's a neuroscientist, recommends that one a lot. And if you've never seen his podcast before, I do recommend you checking it out. But regardless, my dad took those, or more like he ate the fish, and he sort of feels better. And then that number starts to kind of creep down, and maybe, yeah, it could be his natural body's response, or actually, yes, it is his natural body's response. But of course, that is the supplementation. And if you remember, I did mention before, like vitamin B, vitamin D, vitamin K, these are generally essential things so you can actually absorb the nutrients that you're eating as best as possible. Then the second thing that I researched was more systematic levers. So things that support the body more specifically, a little bit outside just like nutrients. These are things like enzymes. So of course, make sure it is okay to actually take and do all those research, go through the process of the 3 questions. But some of these enzymes that they typically either come from probiotics, so like nice beneficial bacteria create these enzymes. And back in the day when we used to eat fermented foods, you would eat that. It would actually help the food in your body actually digest. So again, support that getting of those nutrients, like the essential ones I mentioned, like the minerals, the vitamins, and help it actually produce in the body. So what my dad did, he actually did take an enzyme for a different reason, which is sort of like as a promoter of fasting. But regardless, what we plan to do, we actually haven't quite done it yet, is start adding some fermented foods with some of these enzymes, specifically natto, like the Japanese fermented soybean, because he wants to get a little bit more vitamin K2 from that. And of course, make sure you check maybe with a nutritionist or whoever in your medical team might be relevant, if that would be okay for you. But I'm just kind of speaking out what I've looked into personally. And the other thing I looked at a lot was herbal levers. So this typically is targeted support or feeds some other part of the body to help it work better. And in my case, usually the immune system, or maybe it's something that helps sleep. So I kind of briefly mentioned this before, but my dad takes, for example, he takes ginseng, he takes cloves, he takes reishi mushroom, he takes chaga mushroom, he takes turkey tail, he takes lion's mane, he takes sometimes licorice root, sometimes orange peels or tangerine peels, turmeric, berberine. And I know this list is getting long and I'm probably missing a few, to be honest, but after doing a lot of research for my dad, very specifically on the things that he is trying to promote, that is the answer that we came to. And probably one of the first things that he did start taking was turkey tail and lion's mane, simply because that was actually the supplement that I was taking myself. Because when I was working as an analyst, working for hedge funds and at a consulting firm, people would come in, even if they were sick, they'd be hacking a lung out. But we would have to all sit in a little tiny room in the office because we're working and on calls usually. So I would have to sit there and hacking in my face. And I didn't want to get sick, so I would take some of those things to help my immune system. But of course, do the research for yourself, think of it safe. And remember, always show your oncologist the first thing that I did was show them the list that, okay, I'm considering giving these or purchasing these. And then we asked them. And here's the thing. Of course, if you buy it beforehand, you're just wasting money, right? If they say it's no good. So just ask them beforehand to clear it, to say that it's okay. And then you can go ahead. And that's best, right? You don't want to waste money. Always cross-check with the treatment that you're doing right now. They have a lot of interactions and only the oncologist knows. And the last thing that I researched within supplements is pharmaceuticals. So these are like things that come from big pharma, like, the very distilled chemicals. This is probably the most dangerous one. Like, never stray from the process here. Always go to those websites and check for yourself. Always go to the oncologist, the rest of your medical team, and check. And always make sure it is for a very specific reason. Don't be just taking random pharmaceuticals. Don't be having whoever you're caring for take random pharmaceuticals. But to give you an example, like, what could these things do? It could help with pain, right? Or it could help with nausea, or it could help with, like, say, acid reflux. All three problems from my dad. So for the pain example, so my dad had pain 2 separate times with his hip and then with his arm, and he actually had pain all over actually. So, but regardless, the first thing the oncologist actually recommended was ibuprofen, which of course helped the pain and the inflammation. But on top of that, my dad took some turmeric, and for him that helped. To give you a better example, actually, when my dad was during radiation, they prescribed him a mouthwash that would help him kind of numb the sores in his mouth, because the radiation damages the tissues in there, and he was kind of having problems, like his mouth was like raw, he couldn't really eat, very painful. And my dad tried the mouthwash, but wasn't so great. It kind of numbed it a little bit. So what he tried instead, and through my own research and through his own trial and error, and the oncologist said you could eat whatever you want. Instead of the pharmaceuticals, my dad saw, like, oh, well, if I just have this frozen blackberry, for whatever reason, it helps those mouth sores. So he stopped the pharmaceuticals and just used that instead. Of course, again, make sure it's okay to stop or start to use other things as a replacement. But the crucial thing for pharmaceuticals is always look for alternatives, even if it's not a pharmaceutical. It could be a very simple thing, could be a thing off the shelf, over the counter from a store. I mean, typically the oncologists, your doctors will recommend over the counter things too. But if you can get something very simple from food, why not, right? So this is the process and some of what I looked into as an example. Again, the theme here, if you haven't figured it out already, is with supplementation, you have to be so careful, because number one rule is you don't want to be doing any harm to whoever you're trying to help right now. And then number two is you can see if you can help support them with any of the supplements. And on top of that, luckily my dad is actually very in tune with his own body, and he can really tell how the supplements are affecting him once he takes it. But once you're cleared to take a supplement, make sure you're still very careful about it. Like my dad, if the suggested thing on the bottle says 3 capsules, well, he'll only take 1. Or if it says 1 capsule, he'll break it in half and only take half that capsule, or even a quarter. So to be even more careful, even if the doctor said it's okay, even if the research that you said it was okay. All right, so the next external thing that you can do and help whoever you're supporting with is exercise. Exercise that you can help implement into whoever you're caring for. This helps lymph drain from their body or move around correctly, which is of course linked to the immune system to allow that work to help with fighting the cancer. It also preserves their muscle mass. So while they're going through treatments and they're maybe just sitting there all day, for the most part, if you even can get them a little bit exercise to preserve that muscle mass, it's going to make it so that they can much easier get back into being able to move once they're in a better place. And of course, number 3 is you get that circulation, that oxygenation in the body, which of course gets the blood to vital areas, which allows it to start to heal more effectively. Of course, key here is to do it without any overexhaustion, which is counterproductive. So my research process, does it maintain or stimulate muscle mass? Does it promote blood flow and getting that oxygen into the body? Does it overload the body's ability to recover based on both like the internal feel of whoever you're caring for? You just ask them how they're feeling. Also, the doctors and or like physical therapists that you may be working with. So in terms of what I researched for my dad, first thing is actually just what I would call resistance levers. So this is like strength training. Really the key here is to like stimulate the muscles, so then the body doesn't kind of like eat it away and then he starts to lose mobility. I first started with, okay, well, what are the different types of strength type exercises? He could use resistance bands. He could just do calisthenics, so essentially body weight. He could lift weights. So in the beginning, when my dad first started treatment, he was already lifting a lot of weights. He continued to do that, which was fine. But later on, when he got a little less healthy, his balance wasn't so great, he actually stopped using the weights and instead moved to more body weight stuff because it's a little bit safer for him. Also, the doctors agreed that's probably a good move. And like, let's say resistance bands. My dad doesn't like that stuff, so he never really do that. He just stick with body weights. And we found ways to make it simpler for him by like reducing the lever in certain areas. Just like instead of a push-up, maybe just do his knees instead, or instead of doing 10, he'll just do like 1 every once in a while. And that is what worked for him. But for you, key thing, right? The key question is, again, after going through these questions, well, what can you actually stick to? Kind of like my dad, resistance bands versus body weight. He'd rather just do the body weight. It's a lot easier for him. He feels better doing it. He enjoys it more. So that's the thing that he picked to keep his strength up. And yes, it does promote his muscle mass. He actually looks better now than he did when he was first diagnosed. So, which is very interesting. I mean, he lost some muscle, of course, but he looks pretty good. Then the second thing I did research was cardiovascular levers. So like this is more endurance training. For my dad, I thought about like, oh, maybe he can do steady state cardio. Maybe he can just walk. Maybe he can walk up and down the stairs. Maybe he can jog. Maybe he can do some cycling. Maybe like, who knows? You could consider like skiing if you really like to do that, right? But if you go through the process, let's see, if you take skiing, for example, like sure, it maintains muscle mass, sure, it promotes blood flow, but okay, that might actually get into overtraining territory. It might be a little bit dangerous, right? So you might exclude that. And for my dad, a lot of the times, like when he was specifically getting radiation on his hip for that reoccurrence that he had recently, he stopped running. He used to run because it's a little bit on the dangerous end in terms of impact, right? And that's what the radiologist that we were working with said. So he was like, okay, we'll stop that. And instead he just started plain old walking. Or during chemo, he had problems with kind of like nausea and falling over. So instead of doing the walking on the treadmill like he always used to do, he instead just used a stationary bike, and that was how he kind of kept his cardio up. And next is more neurological levers. So of course, in order for your muscles to work, even if your muscles are like big and strong, right? For them to actually work, your nerves have to work correctly. Or else, you know that feeling if you're like really tired, you haven't got enough sleep, you try to grip your fist, like you can't quite grip it as strong as you know you could. Versus like you slept great, you're really energized, you can really grip your fists really strong, like almost maybe to the point of like hurting yourself. That's a neurological strength. And this has to do with like being able to control your body, like the stability, the balance, the coordination to prevent whoever you're caring for from falling, or just being able to move in general, do things in daily life. So things that I consider was Tai Chi, or using a hand gripper. I'll talk about that in a second. Or practice standing on one leg, or ab exercises, core exercises for stability, like, kind of like bird dog, right? You have to be on one leg and one foot, and you try to kind of get that core a bit stronger. These are all things we consider for my dad. He actually did sort of all of these things, and let me talk about all of them. So, of course, all of them are yes on the 3 questions in terms of the process, but let's say for Tai Chi, he chose that because that's what he liked to do. He already did that. He was kind of into martial arts, and it's like more of a gentle movements, so it was good for him. And the hand gripper thing, right? If you think about neurological strength, your hands, and this is scientific, you can maybe reference Andrew Huberman, or there's other physical therapists that do talk about this online, but your nerves, this is sort of like one of the furthest nerve ending points in your body, other than your feet, of course, right? So by training this, your hand grip, with like hand grippers, we have a hand gripper, you can kind of know your neurological strength and maybe train it a little bit. So I'll talk about this test later, but to kind of get a gauge of where your neurological strength is, or whoever you're caring for, what my dad does, he just like sees how many reps he can do with the hand gripper, and that's kind of day he's like, oh, he's feeling energized, and we track that over time. Again, I'll talk about this later in another module. But he also likes to practice staying on one leg, helps him with the balance, because he did have some problems with balance. And of course, make sure it's okay. and consider some of these more core exercises like that bird dog that I was talking about. And you can do your own research because there's a lot of options. A person that I would consider actually looking into is a physical therapist called Stuart McGill. He's very good in terms of kind of those gentle core exercises that can help stabilize the back, not only the back, but just help with that movement in general. So this is the end of the exercise portion of really getting that blood flow, maintaining that muscle mass. Next thing is, okay, sure, your muscles may be strong, but even if your muscles are strong, if you can't even lift your hands past your neck, of course, you're losing that mobility. So that's what we're going to talk about next. Mobility. So not only does it ease physical pain, like through stretching, you can maybe relieve some tension in some certain muscles, but also it promotes some blood flow. And of course, it makes it so that you're keeping that range of motion that you could potentially have for whoever that you're caring for through treatments that, of course, may reduce these things on whatever that you may be doing, but especially things like radiation. My dad had certain troubles with mobility, so he made sure to do certain exercises with his arms, his jaw, his neck, all that stuff, and he continues to do these so he can stay with his range of motion and allow him to move regularly through daily life. So my research process specifically to find those things for him, of course, let me just tell you this first, is for the specific treatments like radiation, they will tell you, or they should tell you, but also you can do some research on your own. So first question is, does it safely release the physical tension? Does it calm the nervous system? Not flare it up or make it all inflamed or hurt it in any way. So does it do no harm? And can it be applied for those days with zero energy? So one of those topics of research for me was passive levers, whether that is something that you do with him, like just regular old stretching, you help him stretch or help whoever you're supporting stretch. Things with props, so you have a foam roller or something like that, or literally just statically stretching alone, something very simple that they can do. What are these things? You can look at massage. You can look at actual physical therapy type manipulations. So that is if you were to maybe go to a physical therapist, they usually do movements with you by holding a limb and then moving it around in certain ways to help you unlock and keep that range of motion. Or you can look at certain supportive postures. So that is the static stretching. You can think touching your toes type of thing. Of course, you figure out what specific stretches may be helpful for the specific situation and the whatever range of motion issue, mobility issue that you're trying to support, and then clear it with your medical team. But for my dad, right, I talk about the hip a lot because that's where he had a lot of problems with mobility. I actually have this massage gun that I got, which he uses a lot. At the beginning, it was just something that I had for myself. But then I realized, I could actually just give this to my dad and help him kind of relieve that tension in his hip. And the radiologist said it was fine. Probably not going to cause any problems in terms of what the structure looks like right now. So he used that quite a lot. And he just has it now. I just have the empty box. He keeps it in his house. Another thing is stretching. What my dad found was very helpful is just a squatting position, and he stretches out his hip. So let's say whoever you're trying to care for has some sort of problem, then you go through that process. We cleared it with the radiologist. So yes, it safely releases the tension. Does it calm the central nervous system? Yes, because it is literally physically releasing the tension with that physical manipulation of the massage gun and or those stretching postures. And he can do it on the no energy days. He literally has to do nothing. As long as he's strong enough to hold up that massage gun, or he's strong enough to stand up and then squat down, then he can do it, which is why he chose those things. And he continues to do it. Now, the next thing that I researched was active levers. So I would consider these done by them, which means it's not just sitting there. It's they physically have to use their muscle in order to actively put it in a certain position to keep that range of motion. So giving you some examples, it's either usually it's sort of circling exercises, or it's dynamic, or what you can call active stretching. And I'll just sort of give an example. My dad, he was sort of losing some of his mobility with his shoulders, or it was kind of lessening and kind of around his neck area just because he got radiation, right? So some exercise that you do, he would just kind of like try to reach his hands behind his back, sort of like this. And that allowed him to help keep some of that mobility in there. And of course, this is going to be specific to your situation. You got to find what's right. And also, again, I think I mentioned this before, but my dad's friend is also a physical therapist. So these are some of the things that he got from him. And you should really find someone that can help you with that as well, on top of doing your own online research and going through this kind of research process. And next is researching more mind and body levers, which I would consider like building up that more mind-body connection in order for things to move. And I mentioned this a few times, but this is sort of like yoga or Tai Chi. Both of those things, it's like you're moving through a lot of different movements, and you kind of are using your mind to really concentrate it, which can start to help open up certain joints. Of course, as long as they're physically cleared to do it, you choose the one that they would like, and based on your research and again going through that process, I can't say it enough, you find this specific thing that is going to be most helpful for them. So this is the research for protocol, to find those things that is going to help them keep the range of motion, the circulation, relieve the tension to help them go through daily life a lot easier. Next thing is going even more external to environmental factors. So even things like the air or the water and how that is going to affect and how you can, of course, change those things to support their healing. The environment, or removing external toxins or even clutter from the environment, allows the body to not have to deal with that external load and instead focus all its resources on healing internally, on that internal fight of whoever you're caring for is cancer. So my research process for optimizing the environment to support that healing is these three questions. One, can it eliminate stressors or toxins? If it can't eliminate it, can it reduce it? Or can I replace it with a clean, non-toxic alternative? So the first thing that I did end up researching was air quality, because specifically my dad's cancer, right? And you should look into your specific cancer that you're helping support. But my dad's cancer was of the nose, and like his airways were quite messed up. So if the air quality was kind of like even dusty, it would make him cough and it would cause all kinds of problems, like mucus would be coming out. So that is things like, oh, can we get an air filter? Can we open windows? Can we remove certain things that may be polluting the environment? So what were those things for my dad? Well, first of all, we actually did get an air filter. Like I personally had an air filter already in my room. So I literally just gave it to my dad, and now he uses it, and he used it for a good while, especially actually at my brother's house. For whatever reason, it's like dusty in there, or it irritates my dad's airways. So my brother has tons of air filters over at his house, and whenever my dad goes there, he makes sure to turn them on. And of course, if you go through the questions, can you completely eliminate it? I mean, probably not. It's hard to really change the air, but that air filter essentially helps reduce it. So, okay, good. And is there a non-toxic alternative? Like, okay, well, I mean, you can't completely replace the air, so not really. Then now opening windows, okay? It's the same thing. If you didn't have the air filter or was coming along, we would open the windows, and the same effect, of course, considering it's not winter. Although even if it is winter, let's say there's like, my dad used the fireplace at his house. Sometimes if there's smoke, like somehow get pushed into the house, well, he would just open the windows, clear it out. It's better to clear that toxin and be cold for a little while than like breathe in like straight smoke, right? And then removing any toxins that may be around or fragrances in the air. What does that look like? Well, do you have like an air freshener or a scented candle? Like, sure, these things, maybe they're fine, maybe they're not fine. But for my dad specifically, he doesn't need any extra load. Like, that's not natural in nature. It's not from outside. So, okay, we remove the air fresheners because it's essentially an external toxin. And you look around for those type of things that you can do. Then the other thing I researched was water. And arguably more important, because typically you would drink the water. And I talked about this in hydration, all about the filters. You can go take a look at that. But essentially, we ended up getting a filter which reduces the toxins. So question number 2. And if you're also talking about water, it's just like things that you contact in the environment, like your bed sheets, like water from the shower, like cleaning products that he may use. So we didn't go too super in depth with this because, my dad just uses regular old soap in the shower, like he's not using a filtered shower head or anything like that. And at least based on my research, I didn't find it's essential, and my dad doesn't feel that it is essential, so we didn't go that route. But these are also things to consider for you. Maybe that actually shower filter would be helpful depending on your situation. But for my dad, it wasn't. And the bed covers, well, I mean, he just uses cotton bed covers, but if you say like had polyester and you didn't want to have that exposure to potentially microplastics, then you could switch away to just cotton, sort of like what my dad has at his house. And the next thing to research is psychological levers. So this is just the clutter in your environment. It doesn't necessarily have toxins, but if you have like random trash around in whoever you're caring for's area, it could just kind of weigh on them, because typically if they are healthy, maybe they would clean that up themselves. But if they're not healthy, they're feeling bad, they're exhausted, they're dealing with this cancer, and they just see that every day, it wears on their mind. It causes unnecessary stress, and that stress is basically toxic to their body. So if you can see some of those things, that random clutter, and just clean it up for them, that's going to help them heal. And of course, in this particular protocol, I don't say specifically to check with the medical professionals, because a lot of it is just like, very simple household things. You don't have to check it with like your medical professional about like, oh, I'm moving my cactus from here to the next room, right? But if you do have concerns at all, if I don't know what you may be doing with your environment, if you're doing something that you have any concerns at all with, always just check. There's no reason not to. You're paying them, right? You might as well check. And then also within the environment, I know I did mention this in sleep, but can you alter the lighting, like just change out the light bulb for him to like I did over at my dad's house, to be more of a warm light so he can fall asleep easier, and actually really did help him? Or are there actually certain medical supplies that are constantly running out, and then that would stress him out, right? Like he's always worried about like, oh no, I'm going to run out of my toothpaste that the dentist prescribed me because I got radiation. He needs that. Well, I would just go get it for him before it runs out so he doesn't have to stress about it. That's another little environmental thing. By doing that particular thing, you are actually answering that first question, completely eliminating the stressor/toxin. So this is the end of your external equipment that you can use to support whoever you're trying to support's healing, whether that is supplements, movement, or environmental protocols, how to research them. And I know I didn't go really in depth about any particular thing. It's because I didn't want to make this 20 hours long and just talk about like fasting when you're not interested in fasting. Instead, I just covered just the research protocol and kind of give an overview of a couple of things that you might want to look in, and then that is what you can use the research protocol in. Next section though is going to be about how to use perception as a tool, because without perception, you don't pick up on problems. The longer you don't pick up on a problem, the bigger that problem grows. Perception, this is your number one tool for support. Why? Because every single person's cancer is individual. Literally, look at your DNA. Your DNA is different from every single person on the planet, even if you have an identical twin, because you didn't live the exact same life, do the exact same actions at the exact same place at the exact same time. Your DNA is ever so slightly different. And cancer is a malfunctioning cell, a malfunctioning piece of your DNA, or of that person that you're caring for's DNA. So it is individual to any other cancer in the entire world, which is why you have to use that perception to see exactly what issues they may be facing that you could support on, to find that specific thing that is actually going to be supportive of healing. Essentially, your role as this strategic support person, the number one advocate, the caregiver, is the external role, right? I mentioned before of that, the military reference, like they're the ruler of their own body, which is kind of like a country. The cells in their bodies, like the citizens, and the cancers are rebelling, and there's civil war going on in there. You are the external role. You are the strategist, the tactician. No battle can be won without a good strategist, and you are taking that position. And in order to be a good strategist, you have to see the entire, like essentially battlefield, see their entire body for what it is, and be able to point out where potential issues may be. Some issues, of course, like within my dad, he's just going on, he has pain, he's ignoring it, he's not telling anybody. But I look at him, I notice, oh, something is wrong. And I bring it up with the oncologist, or I bring it up with him. And then we go and we move to just solve it, resolve it. Why let the problem stay a problem? Or maybe my dad just hasn't realized yet. Like unconsciously, he is showing it. He's showing some sort of problem. The faster you see some sort of like weird movement on the battlefield, the faster that you can mobilize whatever that you need to mobilize, whether that is the medical team or different things, to then address it. So now that you know that is very important, and that is basically literally the number one tool. If you had nothing else, this is what you use, perception. Next video is going to be about how to actually improve it. Perception, as an advocate, as a caregiver, oftentimes gets clouded by fear. You got uncertainty, you got overwhelm, you got doubt. And maybe this will cause your perception to jump to certain conclusions that could be essentially impulsive and cause bad things. So your job to improve it is to not only be more perceptive, so be able to pick up on things faster, but also allow that attention to be completely objective. Remove your emotions from it, see the situation for simply what it is, and then act on it accordingly. So my process for improving perception is, first, does this particular tool or whatever action that I'm going to take actually help me see with my perception in the present, not in the past, and not getting also colored by the future, only seeing here and now as clearly as possible. Number two, does it remove any emotional biases or help remove those emotional biases? Because if, again, you have some fear and then you take a decision rashly, you mention it to whoever you're caring for, they could also jump into a decision that might not be the right choice if you had thought about it clearly. The last question is, does this particular tool of perception help uncover something that may be hidden within whoever you're caring for, whether that's how they are truly feeling or what they are truly thinking? So unlike the past section, this is more about yourself, your abilities. So this is things that you have to research that might work for you. And of course, it does apply to whoever you're caring for, right? They can use some of these things and increase their own internal perception in order to communicate with you. But for the most part, since you're the one with the clear mind and you're in the more external position, it's more beneficial for you to increase your perception. So the first things that I researched was more internal states, tools that leverage the internal state. What is that? It is meditation and breathing. The simplest way that I found to meditate and what works for me, and of course you can research all the different ways. There's tons and tons and tons of different ways to both do some breathing exercises and also meditation methods, but you find the one that works for you, whether that is a guided app or just a specific technique from whatever culture that you believe is right. But for me, I simply like to sit there, have no thoughts in my mind. If I have a thought, I just kind of refocus on either my breathing, or sometimes I may do like kind of like the third eye area. And what that allows me to do is, like, during the day when I'm with my dad or trying to like pick things out and help him with my perception, I don't have stray thoughts coming in and like bending my perception, because I have that skill from the meditation to, okay, let this thing pass. It's a random thing from the past that doesn't really affect me now, or a random thing that might happen in the future, but it really doesn't affect me now. I just got to see the here and now. And number two thing that I researched is inquiry levers, or your ability to ask questions to yourself and whoever you're trying to help. And there's honestly not much to research here, but it's essentially making sure you're asking open questions. You're not asking any leading questions. And and that is what is going to really uncover their internal state. And that's also, don't dictate anything. If you see a certain something, like it kind of looks like, oh, like my dad is gripping his arm, like it might be in pain. Instead of like, hey, you're in pain, go do this, I would say, why are you gripping your arm? And he may be like, oh, well, I don't know. And it might actually be nothing. Or he was like, oh yeah, it kind of hurts right now. Or like, oh, something hurts. Or maybe he's just stressed out and this is a stress response, which I did find this is actually one of the ones for him. Like he'd be worried about the stock market or something like that, and he would start gripping his arm. And I would go in there, and from realizing that, perceiving that in the present, I could say like, oh, well, why worry about it, and start to, solve the problem for what it is before it grew worse. And that's stress, right? That stress could later like hurt his immune system and just in general reduce his ability to heal, which you don't want. As a rule of thumb, as long as it's not a yes or no question, and also not a leading question that is basically telling them what to do, like, hey, don't you think you should, then you should be okay. If it starts with a what, when, where, who, you're probably good. And the last thing is researching sensory levers. So things you can see your ability to see things. And the act of researching this and improving this is very simple, I think, at least in practice, is because the only way to really improve this is through practice. So by looking at the person that you're supporting right now, literally, like when I look at my dad almost every single morning, not only do I ask his questions, I look at his like small facial expressions in his eyes, maybe the color of his skin, the texture of his skin, the frequency of his breathing, his posture that he's in right now, whether he's like gripping, having certain movements, like the way he's crossing his legs, maybe even the clothes he's wearing, or like, do I see an increased heartbeat going through his jugular vein so I can see like, oh, he might have a fast heartbeat or a normal heartbeat. And I know I'm going like super detailed here, and you might not really see these things in the beginning, but I mean, I guess you could say I'm the type of person to sit at a party and just kind of watch people. So I've sort of had this perception already, but it has definitely got better over time. And if you start to watch, like really watch the person that you're caring for right now, you're going to start to pick up on these things. You're going to get really good at seeing little things that they do and what that actually means. And you can act on it. So with this, you can absolutely improve your perception, the number one tool. The next part is some more external tools to help with your perception. So tracking. So tracking with your good perception, it's going to funnel into the tracking, and then make sure that you're not relying on memory. You have an accurate account of what you did and when, and what were the effects of it. Therefore, you can continuously improve over time in terms of supporting whoever you're caring for. And even if you remember nothing, I want you to take away this. The process that I use, the mental framework, and if you're a business person, this will stick really well, but it is ARR, action, reflection, result. So every single action that you take, you get a particular result, and then you reflect on it. What did that do? How did that affect the person that I'm caring for? And then you have some sort of reaction. Should I do it more? Should I do it less? Is this particular thing complete and we just don't need to do it at all and it had a positive effect? Or it was a complete failure, not stopping doing it for whatever reason? Or is it that we actually just need to do it more and see how it works? Like, didn't really see any clear results. So a couple of different examples. The first example, I talked about it a little bit already, but this is the tracking place, and I'll give you the template so you don't have to worry about it. And I'll talk about this in a second, but we did something called the hand grip test, and this is the actual log that I have from my dad. I'm going to blur it out just simply because everything's individual here, right? You have to decide what is best going to support. But anyways, the hand gripper test is a simple one. My dad was feeling weak, right? He had low strength. So one thing that we started to do was certain exercises. And then on top of that, the other action was to really track his strength was this hand gripper test. So we'd have him use the hand gripper, and we count the number of reps that he's doing. Same hand, same way, same time for the most part. And then the first time those days he was feeling weak, he'd only do it 28 times, right? And then later on, we started to do exercises and certain things that we were going towards. Then he went up to 34 times. Then the last day, which is this date, I don't remember how many days later, but he went up to 45 and then 61. And then he started to hover back and forth between like 61, 14, and 61, like 50, somewhere around the 50 range for the next few times that we tested him, which is just on March, quite a while ago. But that is when I concluded, okay, those particular strength actions worked, close this particular test, main impact was strength, and we should keep testing every once in a while to make sure he's on track with that strength. That is a tracking tool. That's how you use it. I'm going to call it the leverage log that I give a template completely for free. There are going to be a couple of examples in there to just get you thinking about it and be able to use it easier. But of course, it's going to be a little bit messy, right? For a tracker to be able to capture everything, it's going to be a little bit messy and you have to do some kind of like manual dump here. But I did that for a reason, so it's actually easy to stick to and easy to track. And the next thing, as an example, is actually this leverage log as a tracking tool. So the way you use it is basically just, as I explained it, what particular issue are you facing right now? What thing or lever are you going to try to pull in order to help support that system or that issue for healing? Then you put the status. So if it was in progress, you say, oh, it's in progress. Or you didn't start it yet, then didn't start it yet. Once you're ready, you've written the result and you say like, okay, I've gotten a clear result here that I've perceived within who I'm supporting. You slap down the date and then you change the progress to whatever that you thought within your reflection. So should we do this less? Should we do this more? Is this just complete and we don't need to do it? And in my case right here, it was to do this more. And then what is the reaction? The reaction was to keep testing. And this is just also for a tracking purpose. What is the actual impact? And that's it. That is all I do for the tracking tools, because you can get really bogged down in tracking things. Like I know people, at least like if you look at like, let's say productivity YouTuber type people, they're getting like bogged down in 20 different apps, like Notion this and Notion that. You're going through a lot here, right? And so is the person that you're caring for. So that's why I just one simple Google Sheets to track things. So it doesn't get too complicated. You don't have too much work in organizing things. That way you can really just focus on the actual perception itself, the actual inputs to what you're tracking, which is actually more important. So this is the end of your equipment. The tools that you're going to use as a caregiver, as that person who's providing strategic support. Next, there is going to be a few ways you can get some additional help in some of the other modules, but of course, don't worry about that. If you don't want it or don't feel that you need it, of course, all the protocols are here for free. If at any time that you're unsure and you want to check back, of course, just come back. You can take a look into the description of all of these things. I have the like key bullet points, and that should help you recall and then get back into your role. If you're finding this video masterclass helpful right now, I actually do have one more thing for you, which is in the top link description, a free community that I created where I've broken this entire masterclass down into individual 5 to 10 minute videos so you can take it at your own time and also save your progress, start where you left off. On top of that, given it is a community, you can interact with everyone else there that is also in that similar role of a caregiver, someone else diagnosed with cancer, and they really want to support. You can share ideas, brainstorm. Plus, any resources that I mentioned in this video will all be there to download for free. And inside that community will be all the updates and additions I make to this protocol to make it more helpful later on. So if you do think that will be helpful for you, of course, you can just click that top link in the description and join completely for free.